I'm calling to order the City of Burlingame Traffic Safety and Parking Commission meeting of Thursday, September 9th, 2021. Mr. Wong, if you could please read the special video meeting instructions, and then we'll proceed to the other items on the agenda.
All right. For tonight, we're using the Zoom webinar webinar feature that we've been doing for a few months now. The City of Burlingame is now using Zoom webinar platform to conduct public meetings. The public can use the raise hand and chat feature to communicate. We do not have the chat feature. It's not enabled. So they can raise their hand and we will allow them 3 minutes to speak, or to the discretion of the chair, or they can provide an email at publiccomment@burlingame.org, and then we will also read those. So that is the way we will communicate tonight.
Okay. So with that, I believe we can move to the Pledge of Allegiance. If you don't have a flag handy, I could go grab one, but then someone else have to lead it. Okay. So if you're able and willing, please stand. And Mr. Martos, Commissioner Martos, do you mind leading us in the pledge? I'll follow along.
It would be my pleasure.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay, that brings us to the roll call. So, Ms. Brewer, could you please proceed with taking the roll?
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, very well.
Commissioner Rebellos?
Here.
Commissioner Israelit?
Here.
Vice Chair Martos?
Here.
Chair Wetton?
Here. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. I see from the note on our agenda, it looks like we will hold off on approving the August minutes until next meeting. So that's an easy item for us. We will now move to public comments. Before we go to public comments, members of the public may speak on any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to suggest an item for a future commission agenda may do so during this public comment period. The Ralph M. Brown Act, the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. The commission chair may adjust the time limit in light of the number of anticipated speakers. Okay, so with that, I see a hand raised. So Ms. Brewer, if you could you've already done it. Ms. Rosales, we see you there, and you're now on the panel. So you can go ahead and speak and take your 3 minutes.
Great, and thank you very much for the time. And it's thank you all for your service to the city. It's very much appreciated. I had sent Commissioner Chair Wetton a note to you maybe a couple weeks back. I have been in communication with Lillian Cifuentes at the Public Works Department in inquiry of how it is that in the span, come to find out, of less than 2 years, probably closer to 20 months, the ramps on the curbs at Adeline and Cortez, and I suspect this may be true elsewhere as well, but have been replaced twice now in that span. I got information from Associate Engineer Victor Vong, forgive me if I mispronounced that. There was one of the ramps was replaced in 2011. The information I had said that none of the other ramps had been replaced in 15 years. And yet, strangely, on October 25th, 2019, 3 of the ramps were redone and paved. And then again, I don't have the dates for 2021, but I do know that it was just, within the last month or so, they were all redone again. There may, in fact, be sound reason for that. But the answer that I was given from the Department of Public Works was, there are several thousand pedestrian ramps throughout the city, which are evaluated and prioritized for upgrades annually based on available funds. The state periodically updates ADA standards, and as a result, cities have to upgrade pedestrian ramps to bring them up to date. I understand the need to keep things up to date in ADA. I have a very hard time comprehending a scenario in which they would have to be done within the course of 2 years. I'm eager to get a more compelling explanation. But just as a steward of public funds and fiscal responsibility, I felt that the information that was provided to me was sorely lacking. And I would very much appreciate this commission's time and attention to this matter. Or again, perhaps there is a sound and compelling reason for this, but aside from the disruption, it's more about how we are spending the city's funds. And I would very much appreciate it if perhaps this issue could be brought to your attention, put on the agenda for further discussion at another date.
Thank you, Ms. Rosales. So as you know from the preliminary statement, we can't address the substance of your comment, but I'll note, I'm sorry I didn't get back to you. I do live just up the block from you and on that corner constantly. So if you ever want to talk about it, feel free to knock on my door. I may be a familiar face. I'm happy to chat with you about it and see if we can get more information.
If you want to send me, I'm happy to do that. I don't know where you live, and I know you don't need to discuss that now. But yes,
sure. I'll let you know. I'm just up the block.
Got it.
And
I know where Lana lives. I know where John Martos lives. I don't know you, but
you're permitted to not know me.
Got it.
But yeah, I'm much closer in proximity to either.
Got it. Anyway, thank you all, and I just appreciate I just appreciate sort of just noting it. And again, hopefully there's a very good reason.
We'll try and get you an answer. I'm happy to talk to you anytime.
Excellent. Thank you both. Or thank you so much.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Okay. I see I see a hand for Benito. I'm guessing that's Mr. Velasco. So Mr. Velasco, if I'm right.
Yes.
You're on. Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners, Chair Wetton. I missed the last BPAC and TSBC in August. We were out of town, but I understand that the California Drive project was discussed, and there might have been an alternative selection that was done by both BPAC and TSBC, which is good. But I have serious concerns from a purely driver's perspective about the alternative that appears to have been chosen. So I just wanted to formally document that I have concerns, and if you can direct me to the best way that I can provide input from a driver's perspective and from a transit user who rides the 292 bus, how best to do that.
Well, again, without addressing any of the substance, Mr. Velasco, I suppose probably the best thing is what I know you know how to do, which is to send a thoughtful email about what your points are. And I'll certainly read it, and I'm sure others will as well. I don't know if there's a better form at this point than that. So again, I don't want to get too close to breaking the Brown Act rules, but I would probably just suggest that, and we can go from there. Is that all right? Mr. Velasco, you're on mute, but
yes, thank you.
okay. All right. Okay. I don't see any other hands raised. Ms. Brewer, are you aware of anyone else who wants to make public comment?
I do not see any hands raised, and there's no other emails to public comment.
Very good. Okay, we will move on then to the discussion action items on our agenda. So that brings us to community BPAC update. So I'm sorry to call her out, but I see Ms. Beatty is here. So, and now she's on the panel. So hello, Ms. Beatty.
Hey guys, hope you are doing well. I can give you an update from BPAC for our last couple sessions. The first is that we, after our meeting last month on California Drive between Broadway and Oak Grove. We took some time to deep dive and compile our feedback after we had thought through it a little bit more and sent that in writing to the city. We are certainly happy to send that in writing to you guys as well, so you can see what we had to say. And then also, we were asked by the city to help think about sort of temporary interim solutions to what will become the transition. What is the new transition from San Mateo to Burlingame on California Drive, where there are now bike lanes in San Mateo that end at Peninsula Avenue to be picked up by kind of nothing on the other side. And while we wait to get our own bike lanes in, what we asked for was a pilot striped bike lane, which sounds like it will not be possible to do. But we asked for advanced pedestrian and cyclist light timing at that intersection, just to allow cyclists to get ahead of cars so they can be seen. So the danger there is that, you know, everyone's going to be merging onto a road and cyclists won't be seen. And then the last thing is that the city is starting to work on the bike boulevards, specifically Paloma, Cappuccino, Grove, and Carmelita. And we were able to meet with the consultant tonight. And I think it's worth, it will become a big topic of discussion here, I imagine, as to what the features of these bike boulevards are, both how they traffic calm and also how they handle intersections for streets that we're trying to prioritize. And specifically, it seems like Carmelita is going to be a tough nut based on the discussion that we had as how to make it a little more, how to make it more bike friendly. So just a heads up on that. I imagine that's heading soon to you, but we were able to give input on that tonight. And that's all.
All right, well, Ms. Beatty, I have a couple questions, but let me see if any other commissioners do first. Not seeing anyone jumping on it, so I'm going to ask my questions. Well, first is not a question so much as an affirmation. I would really like if you would forward those consolidated comments from the BPAC on California. I would certainly like to see them, read them and consider them. And, you know, we can decide where to go from there in terms of how soon to get it back on the agenda or what to look at. And then the question I have is, it's a little open-ended, but why will Carmelita be a tough nut?
It seems like with parking restrictions and just with the humongous current flow of traffic, that it's going to be hard to significantly traffic comment or to traffic comment enough that it would meet what I would consider to be the standard of a neighborhood bike boulevard. And so that that will be harder to do than other streets that have less traffic on it.
So if I may, my daughter has been physically going to high school every day, and notwithstanding my intentions over many years, I'm finding myself driving her a lot in the morning. So I'm seeing Carmelita now live. And it is interesting. It is obviously, it's a collector street. It's not, you know, it's not going to be a slow street because it's a bigger collector street. I am seeing a bunch of kids on it. They are there. They interestingly don't seem to take it all the way, right? They don't go all the way to California and then hang on California. Or try my plan, which would be to, like, you know, loop over to Carolyn and get on it. They all seem to like take it a couple blocks and hang the right on either Paloma or one block over. But they are there, and when you're driving there, you know, the parking is gone on the eastbound, which is where the kids are going in the morning. And while it's not a slow street, it's not. There's space. There's more space because the parking is taken out. So it might only be incremental, but I think it actually could be potentially made to be a little more safe, make sure the drivers aren't, the main danger is when someone stopped on Carmelita and then people are trying to get around the car. That's when I see like things get a little dicey. But if we could try and make sure, try and police against that somehow, I think it actually isn't halfway bad. I don't know if BPAC has done its own observations like at a rush hour and seen what's going on when there's traffic on the street, like when kids are there.
Yeah, we should explicitly take a look at it during commute hours. I'm pretty familiar with the street, mostly in trying to cross it at off hours, and I find that terrifying. So I have a lot of questions about the safety of that street and the flow of traffic on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I encourage you to take a look. Like I said, I've only really gotten to look at it recently. But whatever our opinions are, there are definitely kids on it, using it as a corridor to get to school. So, and then they seem to go on to Paloma. Okay. Is there any other BPAC business at the moment? No. Hearing it be quiet. I'll.
Through the chair.
Yep, Mr. Wong.
Two things. You do have Commissioner Revelos with his hand up.
Oh,
I
sorry.
just want to,
Sorry.
and the last one, I just want to balance that. This makes the BPAC item a tough one, that it's not, specific items aren't on the agenda that we're discussing. And so just trying to be mindful of that.
Yeah. Commissioner Revelos.
Exactly. So, exactly. So what Senior Engineer Wong is sort of alluding to, I'm not sure. Is there an ability for me to comment or to ask a question on this particular comment?
Go ahead. You can ask a question. We're not taking any actions here, and we've agendized that we're going to talk to BPAC about things that they've been looking at for a long time. So go ahead. That's
fine. I only have comment. I don't have a question. Of course, I was a part of the BPAC meeting prior to this meeting. So I do have some strong feelings, but I'll reserve them until it's appropriate.
Go ahead. I mean, this is a BPAC update. If this is what's happening at the BPAC, I think you could just go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that BPAC supports my feelings, but so I'm speaking for myself. Is that okay?
Yeah, still okay. It's a
Okay.
controversy. Please.
So I feel very strongly about this stretch of Carmelita east of El Camino, and that it's. I think that the parking restrictions and the basically what is amounts to, in my opinion, a business bypass of Broadway would not exist if that was not a multifamily housing stretch of road, which is primarily what it is. And ironically, it also leads directly to the Caltrain station. It leads to the intersection of Carmelita and California, where the bicycle lanes are supposed to sort of convene there for, south of Broadway. And I think that if we're going to talk about a true bicycle highway, I mean, this is the road to do it. We have a road that leads from the west side of Burlingame directly to the Caltrain station that is perfect for bicycles, leads to the bicycle lanes that go to BIS or Burlingame High School, BHS, goes to the Caltrain. And I just am sort of befuddled that there appears to be a car first policy on this road. And it connects the entire neighborhood south of Broadway to Broadway, which is one of the most walkable areas of Burlingame. And there is not a single stop sign or speed hump on that road. There's no traffic calming on that road whatsoever. And I don't want to be disrespectful of previous history of Burlingame. I don't want to be disrespectful of the politics of Burlingame. So I'm not going to be, and I don't intend it to be, and I want to make that clear. But looking forward, I cannot imagine a better road in Burlingame to turn into a bicycle and pedestrian first commuter road. And those are my comments.
Okay. Well, I think people who know me know that you're probably getting a sympathetic ear with me, but in respect of the Brown Act, what I would say is this has been helpful. It's helpful to know that this is coming a little bit more to a head in terms of the discussions at BPAC, the discussions of bikeability, and it might be a pretty good agenda item. I apologize. Sorry. It might be a pretty good agenda item for the future. I hope we do that because I do think car fleet is important. So with that, I haven't gotten a call from the city attorney yet, but we'll move on to item 6B, the stop sign at Truesdale and Loyola.
All right. Thank you, Chair Wetton. Let me go ahead and, it's not really a presentation, just kind of give you a summary, give you an idea of where we're at. All right, so close that. Again, tonight, good evening, commissioners. Tonight, we're talking about an issue that's been talked about previously at this commission. It's about the additional stop sign on Truesdale at Loyola Drive. Back in, over 7 years ago, this commission met and we had talked about 4 stop signs along Truesdale that we're contemplating adding. One at Toledo Avenue, Loyola Drive, Ogden Drive, and Marco Polo Way. Of those, the reasons were there's one approach of Truesdale that's uncontrolled. The side streets are all controlled and one of the approaches of Truesdale is controlled. So we're looking at trying to standardize that. What happened was we had public comments, we had much discussion, and the commission supported adding stop signs at 2 of those locations, being Ogden Drive and Marco Polo. For those of you who've been down there, it's denser. We've got the schools nearby as well as mills. And so there's a right-of-way issues that we had there that have been corrected with the addition of these stop signs. The commission also did not support the stop signs at Toledo and Loyola. At the time, they didn't meet warrants, as well as there wasn't a collision history at those locations. Subsequently, recently, we've had a resident inquire again about having a stop sign on Truesdale Loyola. I indicated that we had previously, the commission supported this decision, but they didn't want to have their voices heard. So we brought it to the commission. As you can see, the concerns, and I'll show you, are again, accessing Loyola Drive and exiting Loyola Drive, mostly during the commute periods, as well as when most likely it's Franklin Middle School and BIS when the traffic comes down the hill on Truesdale. So again, here are the 4 locations we previously looked at, and the one we're looking at tonight is Loyola. Specifically, here's the intersection, and the concerns were eastbound, left turns on Loyola Drive, and westbound, southbound left turns out of Loyola Drive. Currently on the stop approach, we do have the sign of oncoming traffic does not stop, which could be a big reason we don't have
Mr. Wong,
here. Yes.
Mr. Wong, I think it would just be helpful for everybody to orient themselves to tell us which way is uphill on this map.
Uphill is at the bottom of the page. Going towards Franklin School, downhill is at the top of the page.
Okay, so if
Sorry about that.
I were at the bottom of the page, I'd be looking downhill.
Correct.
Got it. And there is already a stop sign.
There's a stop sign located
Going
in
uphill.
going uphill towards I-280, going uphill, and another one at Loyola.
Right. And the Loyola Drive sits entirely north of Truesdale. I mean, I know there's a lot of
Yeah.
questions, but just it's hard
Yeah,
for.
correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Appreciate that.
And as we pointed out, this area is built out. It's primarily residential. We haven't had any new developments, major developments in the area. And although we haven't run current warrants on this, I did take a look at the collision history over the past 3 years, and for this location, there have not been none. So with that brief discussion on my part, I will turn it back over to the chair.
Well, I think you said there were people here who wanted to be heard on this. So why don't we just start there if
Okay.
everyone's okay with that? I
Are
see
there any questions?
someone named, I know that the idea would be we would do questions, but I'd like to hear from the public commenter first in this case. Just
Okay.
And maybe if you could leave the map up, if you don't mind, because I think the map is pretty key for this.
We can do that.
So I see Sylvia on the screen. I apologize, I don't have your last name.
Hi, it's Sylvia. It's Mac, M-A-K. We were the one that submitted the
Okay.
letter. We actually were not aware that this had been considered before in the past. So we appreciate you considering it again. So we often drive on Loyola trying to turn onto Truesdale downhill.
Mhm.
And it's very difficult sometimes, especially during the rush hour times. It gets confusing because there's a stop sign for people coming up, and they let you go, but you're kind of hanging in the middle of the road as all these cars come rushing down to see if you can figure out how to turn. The other thing that makes it complex is that it's a curved road, so it's difficult to see from the stop sign as to whether a car is coming out until you pull out. And so sometimes you can be sitting in the middle of the road, waiting for these cars to come down, and then trying to assess how quickly are they coming down before you can turn downhill. So it gets dangerous sometimes, especially during the rush hour periods. For me, I try to avoid that intersection during certain times of the day. I actually kind of dread going down that way. It's a little nail biting sometimes. And so, it's just kind of trying to prevent those cars, at least having them stop before they continue to proceed coming downhill.
Thank you, Ms. Mack. Mr. Velasco, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I've encountered difficulty here as well, because it's hard to figure out who's going to stop and who's not. And if you're a pedestrian who's trying to cross from one side of the street to the other, it's even more hairy because you think one direction is going to be good with you and then the other direction will punish you. So I share this concern. Truesdale is really a dangerous street. It's like I-380 Junior, which is the way most people use it. Some people don't want to do 380, so they use Truesdale as the 380. And so one of the things that I talked to Andrew about before, or Mr. Wong about before, maybe even this commission, is the speed limit on the street is not well set. The last time the speed limit on the street was set was in 2014, and the city decided to keep its 35 mile per hour speed limit, even though a 30 mile per hour speed limit could have been justified. I really think the speed limit on the street, Truesdale, in this section should be 30, and close to where Franklin is, where Mills Hospital is, where the shopping center is, where the Red Cross is, where we have senior citizens in the care facilities over there, that should be 25. And there's no reason for this street to have a 35 mile per hour speed limit. I don't understand why the city rounded up its speed limit when it usually rounds down. So I'm hoping as part of the outcome of this, whether or not there's a stop sign that's put in the uncontrolled direction, there's a serious consideration about resetting the speed limit on the street to be more in context with the neighborhood and for safety. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Velasco. I see Mr. Terry has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I live at 1809 Loyola, which is 3 houses down from the intersection in question, and I've lived there for the last 6 years. And so I'm very familiar with this intersection. And I agree with the person who submitted the comment that the main questions involved are the particularly the curve of that road is a problem when going left from Loyola Drive down to East Truesdale. You have very poor visibility into what oncoming traffic is. My observation is when traffic is going the speed limit, there's barely enough time to make it out into the intersection by the time you see them and the time you can get there. And quite often people do exceed, unfortunately. So it makes it extremely challenging, and especially at rush hour times, to try and get out in that intersection. Frequently, you need to pull out well into the intersection, blocking westbound traffic in order to see what's coming. So it's a very difficult intersection to go left on. And coming downhill from East Truesdale, we often find that people do not see the sign on the stop sign indicating that they yield to oncoming traffic, or they simply don't understand it. So I highly support adding this. I shouldn't say anecdotally, I haven't observed any accidents, but we're close enough to the intersection that we regularly hear screeching and honking. So it's clear to us that there's issues with people understanding and navigating that intersection, even if there haven't been any recorded accidents. So I do highly support adding a stop sign. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like we have one more public commenter on this. Mr. Chu, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes, you are. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the commission. My name is Richard, and I do live in the area of Loyola and Truesdale Drive. I've been here for over 10 years, and I'd like to formally oppose the proposed stop sign installation. This is a T intersection, and based on my observations over the 10 plus years that I've lived here, there isn't an issue here in regards to collisions that I'm aware of. Also, as you all know and your staff knows, stop signs, installations of stop signs require certain warrants to be met. There's a reason for that in regards to being consistent statewide. And so it's very important to make sure that certain criteria are met prior to installations of stop signs. I think I heard Mr. Wong mention that there has not been any change from 7 years ago when at that time it did not meet warrants. I heard comments about speed and also in terms of difficulty getting out. But that's not what the purpose of stop signs are for. They're not to control speed. And again, if warrants aren't met, the installation of stop signs should not be installed. Installing unwarranted stop signs, I think could make the situation worse, could potentially even be more unsafe. And also the city is at increased liability. And I'll just finally close my comments in the sense that stop sign installation should not be done based on a popularity contest. That's why we have warrants. That's why there's certain criteria set at the state level in regards to what criteria need to be met in order to install stop signs. And if those criteria are not met, then the stop sign should not be installed. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chu. That's very helpful. Commissioners, thank you for holding your questions. I just thought since this isn't something we've looked at lately, it'd be good to get some people who are close by and hear their comments before we launch in. So with that, now we can launch in. Commissioner Revelos, let me try and break it up though. So if you could ask some questions and then we can come back to comments. Mr. Wong, yes.
Sorry, we do have some emails we'd like to read as part of the public comment.
Got it.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead then?
So bear with me. I have about 7 emails to read.
Okay,
Okay, first email to the Traffic Safety and Parking Commission. I strongly support the addition of a stop sign on the uncontrolled approach of Truesdale Drive at Loyola Drive. Lack of a stop sign has resulted in a hazardous intersection and traffic congestion as drivers attempt to navigate turns. Thank you for addressing this issue and considering this comment. Sorry. Best wishes, Sahir Muzaffar. And I apologize if I don't pronounce any names correctly. The next comment, Dear Traffic Safety and Parking Commission, I fully support the addition of a stop sign on the uncontrolled approach of Truesdale Drive at Loyola Drive because this will improve the safety for our community. Our family has lived at the same address on Loyola here in Burlingame since 2014 and have 3 daughters that attend both Franklin Elementary and Burlingame Intermediate School. Over the last 7 years, walking to and from school, as well as driving to and from work using this intersection has become increasingly dangerous. We have observed an increase in the speeds of vehicles on Truesdale and more confusion for those at the uncontrolled approach at Truesdale Drive and Loyola Drive, and observed several near vehicle versus vehicle and pedestrian versus vehicle near misses that could have resulted in injury or harm. By improving the visibility and addition of a stop sign at this intersection, the vehicle speeds will be reduced and drivers will be more controlled and aware of this intersection. In my opinion, the elegance behind this simple action will likely decrease the possibility of harm to pedestrian traffic and also decrease the potential for preventable collisions by vehicles along Truesdale. I would be happy and delighted to see a proactive public safety action such as this intersection. So please add a stop sign at Truesdale and Loyola. Thank you, Robert Ardrey. Next email. We do not need any more stop signs along Truesdale. The sound pollution as it is horrible enough. All of that stop and go will not help. And that was from Alina Leung. Next email. To whom it may concern. I am against the proposed addition of a stop sign eastbound on Truesdale at Loyola. I believe this will have limited benefit and impede the flow of traffic on Truesdale in the eastbound direction. There are 2 stop signs to slow traffic within about 100 yards of the proposed sign. Further, the stop sign at Truesdale and Castaneda is supported by a crossing guard during school hours and is an appropriate place for pedestrians to cross to access Franklin Elementary. Not at Loyola, where it is strictly residential. Drivers turning left from Loyola onto Truesdale may be the biggest beneficiaries of the proposed stop sign, but they have the benefit of a northbound stop sign on Truesdale and clear visibility from the eastbound direction on Truesdale to engage in a safe eastbound turn. To summarize, I believe this proposed stop sign is unwarranted. Thank you for listening. Petra Campos. Traffic Safety and Parking Commission. I am a resident of Burlingame and live in the area of the requested stop sign. I am writing in opposition of the request to add a stop sign for the eastbound direction at Truesdale Drive and Loyola Drive. The staff report indicates that the Traffic Safety and Parking Commission rejected the proposal in 2014 based on unsatisfied stop sign warrants and lack of collision history for this location. It is my understanding that no recent stop sign warrants analysis have been performed for this intersection and no reportable accidents for the last 3 years. It appears there is no new information supporting the installation of a stop sign at this location. Adding an unwarranted stop sign on one of Burlingame's busiest streets not only is unsafe for the hundreds of drivers going through this intersection each day, it also poses a huge liability for the city. I strongly oppose any consideration of adding a stop sign at this location and hope that the current Traffic Safety and Parking Commission can make the same decision as in 2014 to uphold the safety standards and reject the stop sign request. Regards, Susanna Chan. Dear TSPC, we have lived on Loyola Drive for 33 years. Entering Truesdale going eastbound is always a challenging experience. We have to be cautious of motorists running the westbound stop sign while also waiting for clear access to enter the eastbound lane. We feel that the eastbound stop sign will assist in a safer condition for all motorists. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. Larry and Joanne Ballrich. And the last email comes from Karen Patchmeyer. And she says, my parents received a letter from the city of Burlingame that there would be a public meeting tonight regarding a possible new stop sign on Truesdale at Loyola, which having lived on Loyola Drive growing up, my family and I would be in full support of one. And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I'll proceed with my plan to have Commissioner Rebelos start off with some questions. Let's hold it to questions. Give, if necessary, give Mr. Wong a chance to answer any questions. I might also, I'm just going to give some advance notice, ask Sergeant Perna if he can use the collision tool to see if he could pull that tool up for us to take a quick look and see if we've seen collisions in the area. And so, but with that, let's go to Commissioner Rebelos.
Thanks, Chair. I don't have any questions. I only have comments, so I will sit this out.
Okay, fair enough. Commissioner Israelit?
Ditto. I don't have any
Okay.
questions, just comment.
Okay, Commissioner Martos?
Yeah, I want to know why we don't have any recent warrants and how long it would take to get up-to-date warrants on that intersection, Mr. Wong.
Through the chair, we don't have any recent counts that we're doing, and it's tough to do counts right now. As now the things are returning normal, we can try to obtain some counts there and then run the volume warrants. Again, part of the stop sign warrants is a consideration of looking at the collision history here, and so you kind of have an idea of that part of it. We can run we can try to get the data and run the warrants.
Okay. Got it. All right. And another question, Mr. Wong, this may lead into something later, but I noticed there's no red curb on Truesdale, north side of Truesdale, just after Loyola. Nope, just after Loyola, going up the hill, other side of the street, right there.
Okay.
There's
You got it on the
there's
fourth
gutter,
try,
there's a
Mr. Wong.
drain, there's a gutter. There's no red curving there. And I was in that intersection today looking at the visibility. I agree, it's a little hard to see up the hill. And if there's a car parked there or several cars parked to that corner, I think it would be even more difficult. There was actually a car about where that white truck is, or that white van is, which didn't seem too much of a problem looking up the hill when I was in my vehicle at the stop sign, but still I could see how that bend in the road makes it a little difficult to see, but there's no red curving there. And with the rain, what do you call it, the culvert or the drain there, the gutter, should we have a red curb there? Or just so that it improves visibility? And you don't need to answer that now because that's part of what I would recommend later on as we move this through the commission a little more.
Through chair, we can certainly take a look. The reason we haven't is we haven't had an issue up there, but it's something we can look at, right? I mean, we tried, it's a balancing act, as you're well aware of, trying parking in the residential neighborhoods versus the visibility, which obviously the visibility and safety aspect trumps it.
Yeah.
But we can make that balance because we've been here before. We've tried to red curb a certain area and it's gone the other way. So.
Yeah. All right. Those are the only questions I had, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner, Vice Chair Martos. I think that was actually a pretty good question about the red curbing, and I had something similar. I guess my only question is like a request. Would it be possible to pull up the collision tool so we could sort of see relative how this intersection is done relative to others in the area?
Yeah, I think I could do that. Let me just try to share the browser right now.
Okay, thank you. And thank you everybody for being patient for a moment while we pull that up. Commissioner Isolet, I see of your hand up is, I am going to come back to everybody, but is this just a point of order?
Is a question about your question.
Okay.
I just want to, I thought there were no accidents at this intersection, so I'm not sure if we pull up the map.
Well, it
am I
might,
understanding it
Through
correctly?
Chair, I believe Chair Wetton's looking for along the corridor. I did
Yeah.
look at, and we should have the same database, that there were no collisions or reported collisions at this intersection. And yeah. The specific.
Okay, so the map does show a couple here, but as I look at them, they're not at the intersection of Truesdale and Loyola. They're in the area of, so I would need to like pull up each one individually, which I could do. I'm just gonna jot some notes down so I could look, and then while you guys are discussing, and then maybe you could come back to me. But this one right here occurred in 2016. This one here occurred in 2019. Again, see how where it says here occurred on Truesdale, and then there's no intersection. What this means, what it says other location of Loyola, what it's telling us is that that's the closest intersection that it happened to. So I would need to look at the actual collision to see the distance and everything like that. So the way that these are plotted aren't 100% accurate. It's just the way that Google interprets the information that we have. So it looks like there's 3 that came up on here. I could look into those. As Mr. Wong said, this is the same information that he has, so they should be the same. So I haven't looked at these already, so I don't know what they are, but I'll begin looking at them right now, and then if you guys want to come back to me in give me like 2 minutes or so.
that would be great, Sergeant Perna. Maybe you could also click the bike and ped boxes so we could see if there been any of those.
So the bicycle one, nothing came up with that. And then this is 5 years. This is good. This goes back to 2016.
Right.
Here and it's current. And then the pedestrian one shows looks like there's one pedestrian one down at Castaneda.
Got it. Okay.
Anything else for bicycle or bicycle or ped, just vehicle?
That's very helpful. So yeah, while we talk, I see there's hands up, so we'll be doing some talking. While we talk, Sergeant Perna, if you could take a peek and see the question I would ask is, is there any do any of these collisions have anything to do with like left turns on and off Loyola or not? Because I think that would be an important distinction. Okay. I've got a couple hands up. We were going to go around anyway. So Commissioner Rebelos, I'll start with you and we'll make our way through again.
So I have a question finally, but I also have comments. So am I just asking the questions or?
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay.
Both. Just go ahead.
Well, so I have a question for Sergeant Perna or whoever knows. I mean, I have experience running fleets of, 1,000 to 1,500 drivers. And I know that typically when there's a traffic accident involving our vehicles, we didn't call the police unless there was an injury or there was a hit and run or there was a party that refused to exchange information. So I'm wondering what's the criteria here with these police responses to accidents in Burlingame. For example, some police departments will tell you that if there's not an injury or if the other party is willing to trade information, the police will not respond to the accident, or if it's not blocking a lane. So I'm curious about that because I want to know, there theoretically could be a lot more accidents occurring than are being reported. That's my question, which is multiple questions.
Okay, I mean, I could address some of those questions. I mean, simply if the police are called, we're a full service police department. As you mentioned, some police departments don't come out on non-injury collisions. For example, San Mateo is one that I know for sure. that if you call them and tell them you've been involved in an accident and you're not injured, they will not send an officer out. I mean, you really have to have some reason why you would need an officer to respond. They just will tell you that you need to exchange information. So the difference with us is that if a neighbor calls, says, "Hey, I just heard an accident outside," police will respond to that. If someone who's involved in an accident calls, we'll respond to that. A lot of times we do, even with the police response, we can facilitate an information exchange if it is just a property damage only accident. There's no requirement, usually that we have to take a police report on a non-injury collision. So, sometimes that could happen. And then the only requirement then would be is like if there's an injury collision or a major injury collision, then we would take a police report. So yes, you are correct that if people are just involved in a fender bender or if information is exchanged, we might not be able to capture that information accurately. But the problem is that even if we had that information, unless it's detailed in a police report, we wouldn't know the cause of the collision, what actually happened. We wouldn't have an investigation. We would just know that there was a collision. So we wouldn't know that it was because of speeding or unsafe, or failure to yield or whatever the case may be, distracted driving, something like that. So yes, it would be helpful if we had that information, but the problem is that it would also sort of confuse things if we didn't know all of the facts of the collision. Hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you so much. I appreciate the clarification. That's very informational, and I think that helps shed some light on the overall big picture. So should I carry on with my comments, Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Rebos, please do.
Thank you. So, I thought this is actually my first day of vacation for the next week. So I thought this was going to be an easy meeting. I looked at the agenda. I was like, stop sign on Truesdale. Yeah, that will, boom, we'll go right through that. So we're not doing that. So, okay. There's been a well-documented increase in overall vehicle speed in California since the pandemic. In theory, it's because of the lighter traffic that we've had as a state. I also note that the intersection of Castaneda on one side and Martinez on the south side is only the next intersection from the intersection of Loyola. I also want to add that I live on Frontera, which if you look at the map, feeds directly into Loyola. It's a T intersection. And if I'm going into Burlingame, I'm going to make a right on Loyola and I'm going to make a left on Truesdale. And I do that. And so I'm very familiar with that intersection. And as a matter of fact, on the northeast corner there's a house that up until about 3 months ago was a rental house. And when those people moved out, I bought some cushions for my patio chairs from their garage sale. So I'm very familiar with that intersection. I do have sympathy for the people that live on Loyola that want to turn left onto Truesdale. And I noted here on my pad of paper that there were 7 comments in favor of the stop sign. And as I noted here, I hope I'm accurate, all 7 of those commenters actually live on Loyola. There were 4 commenters who were against the stop sign, and I think one of them lived on Loyola. And when I think of that intersection of Loyola going left on Truesdale, I think not only of cars, I think of bicycles. So if I'm a bicyclist on Loyola trying to get on Truesdale eastbound, How am I going to do that? And if you're a bicyclist coming down that hill and you're trying to go to Burlingame Plaza, or you're trying to go to Caltrain, you have limited choices. If you're trying to go to Broadway in Burlingame, if you're trying to go to downtown Burlingame, you have limited choices of which route you're going to take. And I think one of the most comfortable routes potentially could be Frontera to Loyola to Truesdale. We do know that people tend to roll through stop signs. I'm not going to admit any guilt, but it certainly happens. And so when you come down Truesdale, and I don't think we should ever assume that everyone coming down Truesdale is familiar with that road. You're going through, if you're coming from the 280, it appears to be a wide road with great visibility. It's mostly single family homes, large lots, not a lot of pedestrian traffic. And then all of a sudden, you're right there where there's a school, there's senior housing, there's a hospital, there's a plaza, which, by the way, my understanding is that Burlingame Plaza is soon to be coming up for a big development. I believe that property was just sold recently. So there's a lot going on once you cross Quesada. So I think that having a stop sign at Loyola for people going eastbound on Truesdale makes a lot of sense, because it prepares them for what's ahead. It slows them down. It gets them prepared for the denser, narrower road and the more commercial district with seniors and children. And I also think it gives an opportunity for people who are wanting to commute by bicycle or pedestrians, coming down the hillside there from Frontera and from Las Padres. I can't speak Spanish for the life of me, but there's a couple of roads there coming down. And I think that those people probably would like to walk on those roads rather than on Truesdale. And they could eventually join Truesdale at Loyola when it becomes more pedestrian friendly. So those are my comments. So the summary of my comments is I support a stop sign there. I understand, the oversight of the state. I just have to make a sort of political comment here. I find it ironic that a lot of people don't want state control when it's convenient for them, but when it's inconvenient for them, they suddenly support state control. And look, I've lived here now for over a decade in this area, and I believe that there should be a stop sign there at Loyola. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Revelos. I'm with apologies to Vice Chair Martos, because I know you had your hand up before, but I'm just going to run the regular order if that's okay with you. Commissioner Israelit, I'll yield the floor to you.
Thank you. I listened to the various residents' comments, and I was surprised at how many were not for the stop sign. I think that it was fairly balanced. I have to say that Mr. Richard Chu's comments really, to me, hit the nail on the head as far as this matter, and that there are many intersections in Burlingame that are difficult to see, or a little more tricky to navigate, especially during rush hour. And I'm particularly thinking of Hillside, which I have to pull onto from side streets all the time. But we can't put stop signs at every intersection. We do have to go with warrants and justifiable means, and not just because a lot of people want them. As Mr. Chewy said, it shouldn't be a popularity contest. I thought that was actually kind of funny. And we know that stop signs are not warranted to reduce speed, and I heard that brought up many times. And this intersection is a T intersection. There is, other options to cross with a crossing guard just 1 block away at Castaneda. And finally, and there's a crossing guard there during the school hours. So because there have been no collisions there, because there have not been bike or pedestrian incidents at the street, I sympathize and I understand that some of these intersections in Burlingame can be difficult to pull out of, but I am against having a stop sign here. It just does not meet the warrants. And there are enough neighbors who don't want it that I think, it's something that I am not eager to propose.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Israelit. Commissioner Martos, you've been very patient.
Not a problem. Thank you, Chair. I had a couple of questions, Mr. Wong. So we analyzed this pretty thoroughly last time, 7 years ago. Both Commissioner Wetton and I were on the commission at that time. Refresh my memory why we decided not to put a stop sign eastbound on Truesdale at Loyola, if you recall.
Sure, through the chair, it's, and Commissioner Israel reiterated it. At the time, it didn't hit warrants. I mean, it's similar to, situation really hasn't changed to where it is now. Didn't hit warrants, and we didn't have a collision history there. So.
Okay. So we're in the same situation, except we don't have recent warrants, but we don't have collision history. I didn't hear anybody, and I listened to everybody speak. I didn't hear anybody talk about collisions there. I heard about near misses. It's dangerous. It's hard to see, but I didn't hear anybody say that there was a collision there. And Mr. Chews, I actually spoke with him today because I was at the intersection. Says he's lived there for 10 years and he has not heard of an accident or heard an accident at that intersection. So that's one thing I wanted to clarify. The other thing, Mr. Wong, I'm curious when the speed limit on Truesdale changes from 35 to, does it go to 25 at some time down the road there?
Through Chair, it does, and that's by Franklin School. So I imagine it's at Castaneda, that block of Castaneda, Casada.
Okay.
25.
Okay. Okay. So, I parked on Loyola facing Truesdale. I pulled up to the intersection in my vehicle. I did not see any issue at all with people turning onto Loyola from either direction, going east or west on Truesdale. The issue is turning left from Loyola onto Truesdale as cars are coming down the hill. Now there's a stop sign at Toledo. And as I mentioned before, there's no red curbing on Truesdale at that intersection, Loyola and Truesdale, that's west of Loyola. I could perceive that cars could park there and obscure the vision even more than it is right now. And that would make it very difficult. So some of my thoughts are that I'm not in favor of putting a stop sign there because we don't have the hard facts to justify it, and we do want to be consistent. But what I would like to see is red curbing there, and I don't know how far we can make the red curbing go. I looked at that. The parking there is not going to be an issue. If you curb that corner and go up a little further, it's not going to be an issue for whoever lives on that corner. They're actually, the front of their houses faces Loyola, not Truesdale. So I don't think that that's going to be an issue. That's one thing that would improve visibility. But the other thing that I think is important I acknowledge that when people leave that stop sign at Toledo, they're not driving 25 when they hit Loyola. A lot of them are driving faster than that. So maybe we should, from Toledo down to Castaneda and beyond, maybe starting at Toledo, the speed limit should be lower, 25, 30, but not 35. Maybe that's where it should change. That'll give drivers turning left onto Truesdale more time to see cars. Now, sure, you're going to have people that aren't going to abide by the law, but that's why we have police. But those would be some of my suggestions. And Mr. Wong, if you have any other suggestions on how to improve visibility for people that are turning left onto Truesdale from Loyola, I'd like to hear those now.
Through Chair, I'll just
Go ahead.
a couple of those quickly. We will take a look at the red curbing is an excellent suggestion, even though just it's just more to enhance the safety at that intersection. We can look at that. We have some additional signage we can put up, I believe, just for folks come on Loyola, newcomers on Loyola, so they're aware of what they're looking at. Regarding the speed limits, again, in order to make this radar enforceable, we have to do our speed surveys that we share with PD and allow them to basically take it to court when it's contested. The last time we did it, there is a certain procedure you have to follow, which we followed, which required us to round up. And again, we're not able to set these willy-nilly. We will be redoing our speed surveys, and we'll take a look at that. But however, as it's been mentioned through this discussion, speeds are up. So, and other agencies, we've found that it's probably not the best time to do speed surveys now, because more likely than not, they will be on the high side. But we will we'll take a little peek at it with our own radar guns to see what we're getting out there and see when we're ready to do it, to go forward with our speed surveys.
So again, my suggestion was to change the speed limit eastbound on Truesdale, starting at Toledo, make it lower, 30,
Again.
25. That's my suggestion. And
Okay.
you can do your surveys, but that's what I'm suggesting.
Okay.
So I see Sergeant Perna's hand is up, so I'm going to give Sergeant Perna. Oh, are you not done, Commissioner Marches? I'm sorry.
I am done, and if I intrigue Sergeant Perna, this will be a first. So we'll let him talk.
All right. I'm sorry. I certainly didn't intend to cut anyone off. So Sergeant Perna, any additional color on the few accidents we do see on this map?
Yes, so I looked at these and the first one in 2016 was at 10:32 p.m. It was eastbound Truesdale. It was very close to that intersection. However, the vehicle just veered into a parked vehicle. So it not really relevant to that. The second one was in 2019. It was at 6:25 p.m. The weather conditions noted were wet, rainy, and dark. A vehicle was westbound on Truesdale. This was 600 feet west of Loyola, so it wasn't exactly very close. But a vehicle was westbound on Loyola, waiting to turn into a private driveway, and that vehicle was rear-ended. So the primary collision factor on that one was speed. The collision factor on the first one was unsafe turning movement. I didn't investigate that. I may have made that one speed, because if they'd been going slower, it's possible they wouldn't have veered into it, or maybe they didn't see a parked vehicle or what have you. The last one in 2017 was at 11:36 p.m. It was a hit and run accident. It was not. It was another vehicle parked in front of a private residence that was rear-ended by. And it was a hit and run accident. That was eastbound at Truesdale, 11:36 p.m. So these three collisions really aren't, I guess you can make a case, for speed, but not necessarily for any type of failure to yield at that intersection that would, further promote a stop sign at that intersection. And just to echo what Mr. Wong said, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of speed limits I personally, or the police department, we would like to see lower, but there's just a process, there's a legal process set forth that we have to go through in order to make it enforceable. So, the only time we could sort of go outside of that is when it's, there's certain criteria that I don't have all of that information in front of me now, but it would be like, a business district or like a school zone or, something like that. So hopefully when we do the survey next, we could, we could see some lower speeds. But the problem is now with reduced, there is sort of speeds are up because there's a reduction in traffic as people are working from home and, just the effects of the pandemic that we don't necessarily, it's if we end up doing the survey and then speed limits could end up going up to 40 miles an hour, I mean, we don't want that, definitely don't want that. So we just have to be very careful and tactful and really figure out how, the best way to approach it to get it, down, honestly. So that's something, hopefully we could work on with engineering as well.
Thank you, Sergeant Perna. That's very helpful. So I'm the last to go, but I do see Commissioner Reblos, you had your hand up. I don't know if that's intentional or you just have a quick question or comment.
Sorry, it's intentional. I have to look at my notes real quick because the conversation went on longer than I expected. So I had a thought that I wanted to add. Right. So, I kind of established the fact that I don't think most people who have accidents necessarily call the police. But I wanted to sort of, I think I actually touched on all of my points, frankly. There was something about, it's a minor point, but I'll just skip that. Yeah, I put my hand up and I had a thought that I thought was important at the time. I don't think it's so important now, so I'll just pass.
Fair enough. I respect your honesty. So let me make a few points here. One, look, I'll say that I actually don't think that we should just say, okay, warrants aren't met, no stop sign. I really strongly disagree, and I've been doing this a long time, with the idea of some sort of automated decision making. I think warrants are important guidance, right? Like it's certainly helpful to say there are certain indicators we look for, but at the end of the day, I think we have to be responsible for our own judgments about traffic signals in Burlingame. We need human beings to be responsible for that, not rules written, for an entire state where there's endless possibilities of how intersections are different. Having said that, and I'm going to come back to that point, but having said that, I do not agree with the stop sign, putting a stop sign here at this juncture. One, philosophically, we've hit on it a couple times tonight. This bothers some people who want a lot of changes, but we have so little idea of what traffic patterns are going to look like in the coming year and a half based on what we've seen in the past year and a half. It's a really hard time to just suddenly make changes. So notwithstanding the fact that I'm not willing to let warrants say no, I am willing to be somewhat conservative in my disposition. I will say, I think improving visibility at intersections, particularly on curved roads, is always a good idea. I don't think there's a terrible parking shortage, at least there wasn't. If you looked at the snapshot we were showing earlier, there's not a terrible parking shortage. I think Commissioner Martos makes an excellent suggestion about considering some red curbing and improving the visibility there. I also think the speed suggestion is very good. I'll go back to my comment. I don't think we should sit around and like get frozen up by state guidelines. I've had this discussion about the speed limits many times. I've never been satisfied that we are as restricted as people say. That basically the scenario we're guarding against is that someone will come along and litigate against the speed limit we choose, probably years into the future, and put it back to where it was. That's not that scary to me. If we feel like the speed limit's lower, I'm happy to take that chance. Moreover, but more importantly for this situation, there is a stop sign going westbound on Toledo. I don't know. It's like 4 houses there. I don't know. We kind of avoid putting slow speed limits in places where people are already regularly going fast, because the rule is you shouldn't be setting up a speed trap. There's a stop sign there. There's never going to be a speed trap. No one should be accelerating to over 30 miles an hour in a residential area in the space of 4 houses. No one can justify that. So I think Commissioner Martos makes an excellent suggestion that, and this ties in, I think, with what Commissioner Revelos said about there being a lot of stuff to slow down for coming up when you're going westbound. You're getting close to Franklin on the other side of Castaneda, and then you're gonna have a lot of stop signs and a lot slower traffic. So I think it's a very good idea to slow people down at that point. And I think it's legally defensible. I'm not the one to give legal opinions in this context, but I think it's very defensible. And I would want to hear from a city attorney to tell me it's not defensible, because I think it makes perfect sense and it would be hard to overturn. So with that said, just going back, because I know there are several people who wanted to hear me say something other than I'm against the stop sign. Here's my concern. And Commissioner Martos asked why we said no 7 years ago. And I don't have the greatest memory in the world, but I do seem to recollect what bothered me then and bothers me now, which is you have a downhill grade. You have no street coming in, entering Truesdale on your right side as you're heading downhill on Truesdale. You really aren't focused on the stop sign on the other side. So you're basically, if you put a stop sign there, people are going to be completely caught off guard. I mean, it's just a row of houses with no street. You stick a stop sign there, people are going to be, I think, caught quite off guard. And my concern, which I thought I heard, it might have actually been Commissioner Revelos that said this, but forgive me if I'm attributing to the wrong person. My concern is people will roll through that stop sign or miss it. And someone making the left turn off Loyola will essentially assume that traffic's going to stop, and then it won't stop. And actually, that to me is more dangerous than anything we've seen thus far. We don't have an accident history. I'll also just lastly add, this is not a popular view with everybody, but in this case, this really is about cars. Pedestrians have much better places to cross Truesdale, right? If you're going to Franklin or going to BIS, there are definitely other places you should cross Truesdale, and there's plenty of sidewalks going up and down Truesdale. Bicyclists generally don't get excited about stop signs coming out of nowhere. I don't think that's helpful to them. So this is really about cars. And I would say, while I understand the point of view of the drivers on Loyola, I don't entirely agree with it. I think that there's an unintended consequence here that could create a greater risk, even to the people making that left turn off Loyola. So that's my full set of views on this. I see Commissioner Martos has his hand up, so I'll recognize him.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. My point was, since there's a stop sign at Toledo, and I think you reiterated that, since there's a stop sign at Toledo, then eastbound on Truesdale after Toledo, I was advocating lower the speed limit there down the hill. That's the first point. Second point is you taking your life into your hands if you try and cross Truesdale, 4 lanes of traffic at Loyola. There's no crosswalks. I did it today because I wanted to see what it was like on the other side, and it's pretty scary. So I hope that people aren't thinking that that's a good place to cross Truesdale. They should walk down to Castaneda or wherever the nearest crosswalk is. So those are 2 points I wanted to make.
Thank you, Commissioner Martos, and I'll go to you, Commissioner Revelos, but I'll piggyback slightly. I wouldn't want to encourage anyone to cross Truesdale at Loyola. If a stop sign encouraged a few people to do that, that would also be, I think, an unintended consequence and a bad result. Commissioner Revelos.
Yeah. So I just have to make 2 points. One is I appreciate that I do acknowledge that if there was a stop sign on eastbound Truesdale at Loyola, that people would probably more often than not roll through it. But if you're turning off of Loyola onto eastbound Truesdale and you get hit by a car that's rolling through a stop sign, it's a lot different than if you get hit by a car that's going 25 or 35 miles an hour. And that's even more exaggerated if you're a bicycle. And then to the point, I think it was Commissioner Marcos, Vice Chair Marcos made, which is, and I think a couple of people made the point of, how dangerous it probably is to cross Truesdale there. Let me switch my screen real quick so I can look. I want to get the right streets. Granted, I think I certainly agree in the concept that most people that are coming off of Loyola as a pedestrian or a bicyclist are probably going to go down the hill on Truesdale, which is eastbound. But there is a good reason for people to also go across Truesdale and across Toledo. There's a beautiful hike over there. And there is also a temple. So, and there's a Montessori school. So, I don't know that if we're advocating for pedestrians and bicyclists, that we're not missing an opportunity here. And those are my comments.
So I'll point of privilege. I mean, let me just respond to, look, I'd rather get hit by a car rolling through a stop sign than just going full speed, but I'm probably more likely to get hit if I think the car is going to stop than if I don't think the car is going to stop, right? So if you're pulling out and there's no stop sign there and you have to see it and wait and make sure it's clear, you're a lot less likely to get hit than if you think, well, there's a car approaching, but there's a stop sign, I'm fine, I'm going to pull out. And then the car that isn't stopping for the stop sign because they're caught off guard, because I said it's just not a natural place for a stop sign. I could see not improving the safety there. And I'll also note, I'm a member of that synagogue. There's no scenario where I'd be crossing, or anyone that would be crossing Loyola, like there's a controlled, I lived in your building, Mr. Commissioner Revelos, so I know, I lived in your building and walked with my kids to that synagogue. Like no one's gonna cross at Loyola, they're gonna cross right at the intersection of Sebastian. So I think that's an unlikely reason. I think, and I would note, there is a well-controlled intersection at Sebastian if someone is going in that direction. So yeah, I think I'm glad you've gotten us to think really hard about it, Commissioner Revelos. But yeah, I think I respectfully disagree a bit. Is there any other comments? Because if there's not, then perhaps we could move to a motion on this. And I'm not seeing a hand. I'm not seeing anyone waving at me. Would somebody be interested in making a motion to sort of guide the city staff on what we think the right answer is here? I see Commissioner Israelit waving.
Yeah, how about I move that the Teaspoon Committee does not support the addition of a stop sign at Truesdale and Loyola at this time, but we are interested in investigating some red curbing to improve visibility there.
What about the speed point?
I wasn't going to include that because now is not the time, according to Sergeant Perna, to be measuring speeds to do this the legal way we have to. And there's a fear that because people are going faster, if anything, the speed limit might go up. So I didn't think that that was part and parcel of what we were discussing tonight. It's not on the agenda, right? So it's just the stop sign.
That's fair. Well, go ahead, Mr. Wong.
We'd have to know.
One more comment regarding the speeds, and maybe this will help answer. Yes, in some ways we could set the speed. We could put a sign out there that says 15 miles an hour. The issue is we cannot defend it. If Sergeant Perno was to write someone up, it would be considered a speed trap because by taking the data that we get, we will not get most of those vehicles going 15 miles per hour. So every citation that the officers would write would be invalid. It's basically kind of setting up a dummy sign out there.
Mr. Wong, where's it go to 25 on Truesdale? It goes to 25 at some point, right?
Again, during school hours, it's between Castaneda and Casada.
So, again, I'll just disagree with you too. I mean, look, I don't think anyone's going to have a really good speed trap case for a stretch of road that comes right after a stop sign. And I think the worst that can happen is someone brings that crazy case and I guess wins years after we've had a speed limit that we want on that road. That doesn't bother me that much. But I don't know, Commissioner Marta, I mean, if I'm the only one who wants to hold out for that, then I'll move on. But Commissioner Martos, what's your?
No, I made the suggestion, so I would support that we investigate that as well.
There's no harm in investigating it, is there?
I just didn't think we could bring that up since it was just the stop sign on the agenda and not the speed limit.
Well,
I didn't know if that had to be noticed to the public in order for us to talk about that.
I'm just looking at how it's agendized. Well, there's a stop sign discussion, so it's a fair point.
Through Chair.
I think we can. It's just a suggestion. I think if we were going to take an action and change speed limit, then that would be one thing. But I think it's just a suggestion in response to the stop sign request. So I think it's okay. But
would you like me to amend my motion?
If you're willing to, Commissioner.
Yeah, I'm willing to. Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think we're voting on the stop sign, right? So shouldn't we ask for a motion to put a stop sign at that intersection? And if there is no motion, then the issue fails or dies.
We could do that. It's just, Commissioner Martos, do you want to put on the record that we are suggesting other improvements in the intersection?
I do, but yeah, I do. I mean, I had some suggestions that were a compromise, I guess. But I think we're voting on whether we should put a stop sign there. I don't know how we put it on record. So it's up to you, Chair, how you want to handle this.
I always want to err on putting our views on the record when we can, because we don't get a lot of chances at it. That's my philosophical approach. So I'd love to have a fulsome motion if we could get it.
So we could break it up into two.
Yeah.
If the first motion fails to put a stop sign there, then we can have a motion to red curb that area and study, changing the speed limit.
Okay, that works for me. That means that we need our dissenting commissioner, and I say that with great respect because I'm glad he got us to think about it. We need our dissenting commissioner to tilt at a windmill if he's so inclined. And I say that as one who's done it a few times and been unanimously voted down. So, Commissioner Ravelos, are you inclined to do that?
To second that?
I guess you would have to move to approve the stop sign, or move to recommend the stop sign at Loyola and
I see.
Truesdale.
So right. So I would move to recommend the stop sign at Truesdale and Loyola.
Okay, I will second it for the sake of having a vote. So let's take the roll.
Commissioner Revelos,
Yes.
Commissioner Israelit,
No.
Vice Chair Martos,
No.
Chair Wetton.
No. So the motion fails 1301. It's a new number. Okay, so now having voted that we don't suggest the stop sign, why don't we, Commissioner Martos or Commissioner Israelit, if we could get a motion on suggested alternative.
Commissioner Isola, I'll let you go ahead.
Okay. I move that the city studies the consideration of red curbing along the intersection at Loyola and Truesdale to improve visibility, as well as considering studying decreasing the speed limit eastbound beginning at the stop sign at Toledo Avenue on Truesdale.
I'll second that motion. Okay, let's take the roll.
Commissioner Revelos,
Yes.
Commissioner Israelit,
Yes.
Vice Chair Martos,
Aye.
Chair Wetton.
Yes. Okay, motion carries 4001. Very good. Thank you. And I actually do appreciate that we had a little dissent there. I think it's actually, I generally view that as a good thing. Makes us think a little harder. Okay. Now we can move on though. We are up to item 6C, which is the Burlingame Intermediate School walking out.
Thank you, Chair
Hello,
Wetton.
Ms. Mai.
Thank you, Chair Wetton. I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Mai, as we were both out there, but she's been the one preparing this one. So take it away.
Yep. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an informal update on the walk audit at Burlingame Intermediate School. Go ahead and share my screen. Does everyone see the presentation? Great. So this is an informational, sorry, not informal, my apologies, informational update on the Burlingame School District commissioned walking and biking audit at Burlingame Intermediate School. For those in the audience who may not be familiar with a walking and biking audit, it's a school safety assessment involving gathering in-field data about environmental conditions that affect walking and biking. The objective of the Burlingame Intermediate School assessment was to identify existing conditions that help or hindered safe walking and biking in the vicinity of the school, and then to develop a series of recommendations for transportation infrastructure and policy improvements based on these observations made. But before we start, I would like to thank the school district for spearheading and leading the assessment efforts. The walking and biking audit is another great tool that the city will be able to use to effectively analyze the design and condition of our transportation network. So the school safety assessment was conducted on May 25th of this year. The school district invited members of the community to participate in the process. Participants include Burlingame Intermediate School and their school safety committee, their hired transportation consultant, Parisi, the members of the Community Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and Burlingame's Traffic Safety and Parking Commission School Traffic Subcommittee, which consists of 2 of our commissioners, and Burlingame Public Works staff. So the observations were conducted during afternoon pickup period. Participants watched drivers and students and watched their behaviors during this time at some predetermined locations that were identified as critical or important in developing an optimal assessment. So some of these are lists of locations: Casada, Clarice, Davis, Ray Drive, Devereaux, and Marco Polo. So on Casada Way, this is the main street fronting BIS. BIS is located right here. Truesdale is to the north here, and Davis Drive is on the right over here. And so this is Casada. In general, vehicles were observed to be parked in a lot of the red zones fronting the school site. At the location near the existing bike cage, it was observed that it was over capacity during school hours. And the report also noted that in the morning areas, as bicyclists ride up Casada, there are conflicts between bicyclists turning left towards the bike cage and motorists driving south on Casada Way. In front of the school driveways, drivers were queuing up at the pickup time, and a lot of the vehicles were spilling out into the roadway, blocking crosswalks and restricting visibility. There's a crest along Casada Way right here. This is right before the intersection at Clarice, where there are 2 adjacent crosswalks. And this does adversely affect sight distance between drivers, pedestrians, and bicyclists. And this is also right here. It's also where the existing bus stop location is. Further down from the crest is the intersection of Clarice Lane and Casada Way, where there are 2 crosswalks with only 1 crossing guard. At the same intersection, it was noted that conflict was observed between drivers and large volumes of students exiting the school by foot or by bike. And as we walk further down Casada towards Davis, there are pedestrians that were observed walking into the roadway due to the narrow sidewalk that was overcrowded from students buying ice cream from an ice cream truck that was parked along the curb. So the following is a list of observations observed at other locations near the vicinity of the school. On Clarice Lane, it was noted that vehicles would tend to make U-turns in the roadway. It is used as a secondary drop-off and pickup area. Along Davis Drive, which is south of the school, it's used as a secondary vehicle access to El Camino Real. And Davis Drive, just to note, is a according to our 2020 newly updated bicycle and pedestrian master plan, it's been identified as a future bike boulevard with traffic calming measures. On Truesdale Drive, it is a very wide arterial road with some collision history. We actually just talked about speed and Truesdale, the earlier item. But it does provide access for students walking and biking from neighborhoods north of the school. On Ray Drive, there is a curvature in the roadway, which the report noted that does restrict sight distance, and that crosswalks that crosses Ray Drive lack warning signs. At the intersection of Devereux and Bernal Road, the corners are a large curb radii, which then results in a longer crossing and does allow for vehicles to make turns faster. The crosswalk is noted to lack warning signs. But I want to know, I think when we were there, the high visibility crosswalks were not installed at the time, but they are now high visibility crosswalks. But it was observed that vehicles were parked close to the intersection, which always restricts visibility. And it's used as an informal morning meeting place for walkers and bicyclists to gather before heading to school. So apologies if this is hard for some folks to see that might be watching this video on their iPhone. I sometimes tend to do that. So I'll try to go over these for you. So I'll highlight each of the yellow ones as I move along. So these are recommendations from Parifi's report. And these recommendations specifically focuses on improvements along Casada Way. So first is it was recommended to potentially look at a speed table or what we call speed cushions along Casada Way, to install some red curbing. I'll put my pointer right here. So to install some red curbs at driveway approaches, and also to install some red curbs in front of the bike cage. I'm sorry, this one is to install a curb ramp off of the staff parking lot driveways so that bicyclists have an easier access into the landing area of the bike cage. And then it also talked about having red curbing near driveways and in front of the bike cage. It's recommended that potentially we can relocate the bus stop that's just right before the intersection, right at the crest, to maybe closer to Truesdale Drive. For vehicles exiting the school site, it would be ideal to add a stop stencil so vehicles know to stop before they edge out into the roadway. Here it talks about this green area to do some kind of treatment, maybe a quick build to extend the sidewalk out to address the sidewalk crowding issue. It's suggested that potentially with the bike cage over capacity, that installing a second bike cage closer to the crosswalk intersection would be ideal. And then here at the intersection of Clarice and Casada Way, to install some curb bulb outs, either temporary or permanent. And to do a study to see potentially making this particular crosswalk that crosses Clarice into a raised crosswalk. And highlighted here in orange talks about the orange lines that you see here that goes along Casada, Clarice, Marco Polo. This is the recommended designated route for drivers and pedestrians and bicyclists. Also designated in red on this exhibit is the recommendation to install a pedestrian loading zone for this stretch of Casada during drop-off and pickup hours. So the next slide, again, this is recommendations from the report. This focus on, again, showing the preferred bike route for, pedestrian drivers and bike routes, to designate that as the route for drivers to take for drop off and pickup. So this first recommendation talks about implementing the preferred community design for Truesdale Drive, and constructing some curbs at corners, to add some ahead placards to the existing school zone sign to complete the school assembly. Recommended to make the crosswalks at Davis and Marco Polo into high visibility crosswalks. And also considered implementing dash center lines and right edge lines to narrow up the perceived width of Davis Drive, as this will be a future bike boulevard destination. And then again, similar to Clarice Lane, the recommendation is to maybe construct some bulb outs here that reinforces no parking at the corners. Down here, it's recommended to look at maybe installing some crosswalk warning signs at the uncontrolled crosswalk of Ray and Clarice Way if a always stop control is not added or recommended. And over at Devereaux and Burno Road right here, these comments kind of reflect some of the observations and concerns that they saw. So this includes formalizing a meeting location to create a safe waiting area for students, painting some kind of bulb out at the corner to reduce the curb radius, and to install some crosswalk warning signs at the uncontrolled crosswalk. Again, if an always stop control is not added. So what's different from the designated bike routes here from the previous slide is, so in an effort to help with a designated driver, pedestrian, bicycle routes, the report recommends looking at considering installing some kind of traffic barrier or signage to prohibit access into a certain road during school hours. So I see that as more of similar to what we have for McKinley over on Paloma, where during certain hours of the day, specifically school drop off and pickup, that the restriction to traffic for one particular direction is applied. So for implementation of these recommended improvements, some of these short-term improvements actually, so staff reviewed all of the improvements, and some of these short-term improvements, such as adding red curbing, completing the school assembly sign, those have been completed. We did that right before school started. Crosswalk study and always stop warrant analysis have started. So we've hired as part of our looking at different intersections throughout the city. The ones that were recommended in this report is being considered. Temporary curb extension or temporary bulb outs are being considered in upcoming pedestrian improvement projects. And staff also met virtually with the district's new chief business official regarding coordination of these recommendations, specifically such as designating a drop-off and pickup route, adding loading zones to a good amount of frontage in front of the school, and roadway access restrictions. We also compared some of these recommendations in the walk audit to that from the bike ped master plan, and the city's plan for project implementation is based on funding availability as we go down the list of priority locations identified in the master plan. But the observations and recommendations for Clarice, Truesdale, Davis Drive will be another great resource for the city to reference when we look at improvements in these areas. So with that, I'll take any questions anyone has.
Okay. Well, I have a lot to say, but I'm going to hold my tongue. Let's see. We have a couple members of the public. Their hands aren't up. So let me go to the commissioners, let them ask questions. I'll give members of the public a chance to come in if they change their minds, and then we can go around another round of comments. Why don't I switch it up a little bit? Commissioner Israelit, why don't you lead this one off, and then I'll go to Commissioner Revelos.
Thank you. I was wondering if that would work best, because Chair Wetton and I were on this walk audit, and I also was working with the team to come up with a lot of these different suggestions. So I'm sure it's overwhelming to see all of this, especially if you haven't had a kid that went to BIS and actually navigated this this dangerous situation. And I will say that Parisi could not believe how chaotic it was. That, you know, when your own consultants are freaking out, it's not a good thing. So I do want to point that out. Obviously, I've had a lot of time to really go through this, and I agree with a lot of this, but there was at the end, and Ms. Maya, I'm sure you and I were both actually commenting on this. There were some things some loose ends that weren't tied up yet, some things that we didn't really decide on or fully understand. So one thing is that where we have the green line currently, that may be a site for a second bike cage, because it's great that so many kids are riding bikes to school that we don't have enough room for them in the current big facility. Again, that ice cream truck was parked there, and it was a nightmare. Like, kids 3 abroad were stepping out into the street to go around it. So I don't see anywhere that we said this, but I thought that was going to be red curbed as well. I know we talked about paint, like, maybe widening the sidewalk to allow for a heavier, traffic as school let out. But I also think that somehow we should consider red curbing that, because we can't have ice cream trucks parking there and parents parking there. So that's one thing that's sort of a detail that might have fallen through the cracks. One thing also, is that currently we have this orange drawing to show how we want drivers to drive. And obviously we're trying to avoid having all the drivers go to the front of the school, where there are those 2 dangerous crosswalks with 1 crossing guard, et cetera, et cetera. Parents are not going to go down Casada and turn right on Davis by their own free will. They're going to go straight, and they want to go straight to BIS and drop off their kid and then go. So the only way that I see this working is if there is a sign that prohibits going straight during school drop off. Otherwise, you can say that that's the preferred route. It's just not going to happen. Similarly, we talked about at the bottom, if you do go down Davis and then you're sort of on Marco Polo Way where the arrowheads are, in order to minimize conflicts with cars and pedestrians at the 2 crosswalks we talked about up by Clarice and Casada. Again, we talked about having possible signage, not saying no left turn onto Clarice during school drop off and pickup. You know, and that was sort of, Parisi was, they're fantastic and they were so good, but there were just these sort of loose ends at the end that Miss Mai and I were like, but wait a minute, it's not, we didn't quite hammer out these details. I do want to say one thing. You talked about prioritizing and how to pay for and start building out some of these things. And I would like to just say that I think school safety trumps the city's master plan. So I know, you know, we might want to have, you know, Clark have Davis, you know, be painted out and everything as a bike corridor. But I think safety of pedestrians and bicyclists, those measures need to trump the, you know, bicycle corridor, or some of the more niceties that are not as, you know, imperative. I think that's it. Those are just the things that jumped out at me after not seeing this for a long time and kind of letting it percolate and stew. And I will turn it over to someone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Isolet. Commissioner Revelos?
Yeah, I think I just want to support Commissioner Israelit's comments about the traffic flow primarily, because that's something I definitely understand. I spent my years in 7th and 8th grade in a school up in the Northwest that the school was an old brick building, and our playground was across the street. And so the only way to protect the children was to close that street with barricades. And I agree with the notion that Commissioner Israel puts forth, which is that if there is not something to physically prevent drivers from continuing at Quesada from Davis, or turning left onto Clarice from Marco Polo, or whatever it may be, or stopping in the wrong place, there has to be a physical barrier. I mean, the Burlingame police can't afford to put a police officer at every intersection and to enforce no left turn. So signs are nice in thought, but they don't necessarily work, especially once someone sees a couple of people disobeying those signs, they will just go on and do the same. So there needs to be physical barriers. So there needs to be some sort of program in place. I like this plan, by the way, but there needs to be some program in place to put physical barriers there at the start of the, you know, of this process, when these hours when these pickups and drop-offs are going to occur. But without that, it's a beautiful plan, but I don't think it's going to mean anything unless somebody is somehow enforcing it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Revelos. Vice Chair Martos?
Thank you, Chair. So, Commissioner Israelit touched on it. This is a lot of work, a lot to digest. Seeing it for the first time. I'm seeing it for the first time. I like it. It's been a long time since my children went to BIS, but it was chaotic then, and it's still chaotic. So something definitely needs to be done. It's very comprehensive. I like what I'm seeing here. I'm wondering about implementation, and I don't have anything specifically, so I'm going to make general comment. Are the improvements funded? And is there a priority of the implementations, and what is that priority? What are we going to do first? Are we going to do everything, or are we proposing that everything get done at once, and what's the timeline? So if Ms. Mai or Mr. Wong or someone else could maybe answer those questions.
Yep. Through the chair, for implementation, we are looking at, for example, the painting the curb red. Those were done, right? Those we did with the help of our corporation yard staff. We were able to do that in-house. As far as funding for other improvements, the suggestions for installing some curb bulb outs here, curb bulb outs at Truesdale Drive, and potentially curb bulb outs at Devereux and Verno. Those will be programmed into the upcoming pedestrian improvement plan, which with the city was awarded $200,000 in MTC grant funding. But there is a little, because the grant funding is federal grant, there are a lot of red tape that we have to go through. So if we cannot get that project going this year, we're looking at using existing funds that we have to implement those changes, to implement those improvements as soon as possible. As far as designation of a route for drivers, we need to digest this a little bit more because as Commissioner Israelit had mentioned, there are some lingering questions. If drivers come down Marco Polo and drop off students, dashing across Marco Polo is not it's uncontrolled, and there is no crosswalks there. And then also the motion of coming down Clarice and turning down, coming down Casada and making a left on Clarice after the kids are let out or hopped into the car. The drivers are now having to cross two very busy crosswalks. Previous slides show just how chaotic it could be with students. Just, there's really no break, and you see sometimes drivers kind of edging up a little bit and try to find a break in between students crossing to get by, to get through one crosswalk, let alone two crosswalks there. So I think having a designated school route is ideal, with some kind of movement restriction would be great. But what that route looks like and what is the best route, there's again some more we need to digest and look at, and to coordinate with the school itself. And so we've began conversations with the school. They have a new principal that's just kind of getting on board. And so it's in her peripheral view as well as the superintendent. And that's one thing that they are aware that I want to have discussion with them.
Through the chair,
Thank you.
just
Sure.
just a little more, and especially for the newer commissioners that haven't gone through this, but what we've done at many of the other schools, for precisely other schools, Lincoln, McKinley, Roosevelt, and Hoover, to help implement the drop-off pickup routes, we have turn restrictions. And those turn restrictions, it's a balance between the school, the neighborhood, and obviously the route that we all look at. And so before any of this is implemented, it will be a process. It's just not us saying, hey, this is a great route, let's do it. And for some of the other commissioners who have been through this, it is a process. You have to work with the neighborhood because they're the ones impacted. If we put a turn restriction and they can't get out, there's some accommodation to that, but they have to be aware of it, because if a lot of them leave at that time, like Commissioner Revelo said, it doesn't work. But putting physical barriers is difficult because how do you get them out there all the time, right? They're in the cities right away, and so they have to do something specific. And we've looked at stuff like that, but to do it day in and day out, it's a labor. I mean, look at the closures for Burlingame Avenue when those barriers were put out. It's bigger than it seems. But just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. That's helpful. And I might take that opportunity to add, I have a bunch of things to say and you'll have to indulge me. But I take the opportunity to add my perspective on the one-way thing, because I think I might be the only commissioner that has seen every single other one-way of those 4 schools put in place. Because I remember we did Lincoln when I first started. That was even, with apologies to Commissioner Martos, I think that was even before Commissioner Martos. And then I've seen it happen at McKinley, at Roosevelt, and we were pretty instrumental in pushing it at Hoover. And what I'll say is, it every time, in some cases more so than others, every time there's resistance and there's nervousness and there's, oh, well, but people will want to go the other way. And in my experience, once it's been done, everyone's like, oh my God, this is so much better. And I'll say, Commissioner Israel mentioned that the consultant was surprised at the chaos that we saw at BIS. I have one kid who just finished BIS not that long ago, now 2 kids in BIS. I was surprised because I guess I'm fortunate. I could just tell my kids to walk there and walk home and not actually go witness it. It is really bad. And by the way, this is like in the pandemic too. Like, so I could see how it could even be worse if it wasn't pandemic. So it was something to behold. Everybody making a decision on this in any respect should go and see what dismissal looks like at BIS. Please walk there from a distance and don't drive into it, because it is unbelievable how many conflicts there are. This picture in the lower right-hand corner is frankly quite charitable to what's going on. That almost makes it look more orderly and like everybody's going in one direction when that's not the case at all. It's like people, it's a lot of head-on into each other. And so I think we should be thinking really hard about the one-way flow. I agree with Commissioner Israel and Ms. Mai that there are secondary impacts, and we have to think all that through. And my point when we were setting the agenda to Mr. Wong is like, we have to get that process started. It's complicated. This is definitely more complicated than the 4 elementary schools. So we have to get this process started now and stay on top of it for there to be any hope that this goes into place in a year. And I wouldn't wait too long, frankly, for the principal or the superintendent to give a lot of guidance on traffic flows off school grounds. I think historically, they can tell me I'm wrong. Historically, they have not been too eager to get into the mix with that. From their point of view, it's like, well, it's off school grounds. What do you want from me? So I wouldn't spend too much time waiting for them, because these kids that we see in the pictures will be like in graduate school by the time we do anything, if we do that. So I think I'm really glad that we've got a traffic flow baked into this plan. I think Mr. Wong has a pretty fair point about the barriers. We've been able to overcome that everywhere else with signage and very aggressive education. And that is where the schools come in. Like once we kind of have done it and there's a plan, then they often can be, the principals can be very, very helpful in educating parents and back to school nights, because they don't want this chaos either. I think the off Quesada drop zones can be extremely helpful. I don't think a lot of people do it. I did it. I have done it. Some people are nervous about their kids walking the 2 blocks. And a lot of times there's sort of a follow-on effect where, you know, you got to get some people to do it for more people to feel comfortable doing it, because then they see there's not just their one 6th grader walking those 2 blocks, but there's a pack of kids and it's not so bad. So I think it's something we would probably need to be proactive and encouraging, to say, hey, you know, with signage and you know, thought given into the crosswalks, like, hey, you know, dropping your kid at Clarice and Marco Polo is actually a really good idea. And they're gonna have a very safe walk to school, and it's better than you trying to drive into the maelstrom at Quesada. To Commissioner Rebelos's point, I have had to drive up there. I'm happy to not drive up the wrong way up Quesada. Like, it's pretty miserable. So I don't think it'll be that hard to discourage people, but you do need a nudge, and you do need guidance. And we do have a crossing guard there, although I don't think they're in the right spot to discourage the traffic. So we might need signage, we might need some other things. I would add a couple more things. I mean, I think the bike cages, that's something that we should look to the school district on. They have a capital budget. And I think even private parent fundraising might be available for that. I think there's a lot of parents who really care about having their kids be able to bike. I think there's really no reason we shouldn't have a second bike cage. The one part of this plan I don't love is the speed tables. If you look at what's going on in dismissal, it's not speeding. Like, that's not the problem on Quesada. Like, no, there's too much traffic. No one's going fast. I don't see the speed tables adding anything, frankly. I think it's an expense that would get in front of other priorities. It would cause additional confusion. So that was the one aspect of this plan that I didn't really like. And then the last point I'll make is Davis being a bike corridor. I appreciate sometimes you got to make choices between master plan, school safety. I don't actually think this is a choice. I think if we're going to make this traffic flow work, we may want to discourage. In fact, I think we would have to discourage what we see today, which is parents speeding towards Quesada on Davis because they're running late to school. I know at least one resident of Davis for whom this is like a perennial complaint because there's no stop signs there. So it's just like a fast and furious corridor for every tardy parent in the school district. Thank you for putting the map back up. So I actually think doing some really proactive things in order to make this flow work, say, actually, no one is going up the hill on Davis, you're going down the hill, and we're gonna try and make it more bike friendly. I think those things are entirely consistent. I don't think that there's a trade-off here in this case. But again, this is a one-way traffic flow that is on an order more complicated than Lincoln, Roosevelt, McKinley, a little closer to what Hoover is, but even more complicated at Hoover. Hoover is one of those where you have to think it through more holistically in a broader neighborhood. And I think it's even more so here. So when we say, hey, we're going to do a one-way traffic flow of Quesada, you have to bake in, like, maybe you're doing it on Clarice, maybe you're doing it on Davis. You probably are going to get some people who are pretty unhappy because they have some benefit they're holding on to. But I think the alternative world we could live in where we have this kind of flow is significantly better than what we saw out there. It's hard to describe if you haven't seen it. It was crazy. So, and I have my own children out there in it. So I guess I am a little more motivated to see it improve. So, sorry, I had a lot of pent up comments there, but that's all I've got. Is there any other thoughts on this? Oh, I do see a hand. Oh, Commissioner Islet. Oh, now Commissioner Revelos.
My only other comment is, I mean, you're right about the loop, and we haven't worked out the best way. Like, you know, if you have people coming down Casada, according to the map right there, and then turning left, you know, they're going through both of those two crosswalks that we say are so hairy. And, you know, if you have them go straight, I mean, there's no great solution that we've come up with. So that definitely we need to think about the unintended consequences of diverting traffic around. But the reason I raised my hand is this may be completely impossible or impracticable, but we did talk about, like, would having 2 crossing guards, one for each of those intersections, make sense? Because the Parisi was saying that, you know, to have 1 crossing guard do both of those busy crosswalks and intersections is like it's almost impossible. So if we could just put that somewhere on a think about list, Miss Mai, I would really, you know, I don't want to forget about it.
Just which 2 are you referring? Those 2 intersections you're referring to?
The intersection, the crosswalk that goes directly across Casada, and the one that crosses directly at the top of Clarice. So there's 1 crossing guard, and it used to be the janitor who was responsible. I mean, he was nice, but, you know, he was overwhelmed, who was responsible for getting, there you go, in the upper right picture. So 1 that goes directly across Casada and 1 that goes directly across Clarice, and there's 1 crossing guard, and he or she is supposed to be watching all directions and kids that are stepping off the curb. So it's, as they said, it's chaotic, and they were amazed that only 1 crossing guard was present. So I just want to throw that out as food for thought.
Okay. Commissioner Revelos, your hand is up.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm looking at the map for Clarice and Quesada, and I see the crosswalk issue. So I would sort of jump on board with the thought that the route isn't perfect. It needs some refinement. I'll leave it to the experts and to the people who have children attending that BIS. But I just want to make a couple of comments. One, you know, I appreciate historical data and anecdotal information, but I also see what's happening today, and behavior changes over time, and we're into a different place now, where so many people work from home, and I'm a business person. I do a lot of business, and I do not see, and many of my colleagues agree with me, a path to where we're going to ever go back to the scale of people working from an office or a campus again, compared to pre-COVID. And what that tells me is there is going to eternally be more and more parents driving their children to school, unless they elect to let their children walk or bicycle to school. And I don't know how that's going to play out, but I do feel very confident that the notion that parents will be out of the picture because they have to go to work. I think I'm very convinced that I know how that's going to play out. There's going to be fewer and fewer of those parents.
Well,
there's going to be more parents. Yeah.
I'll just make a point of privilege. Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, Commissioner.
No problem. I mean, so many things are up in the air right now, and I don't pretend that I know everything, because I certainly don't. But my opinion is I I don't think we can assume that in any way that there will be less. I think it's just a given. I think that if you're a parent and you have the opportunity to drive your child to school and your child wants to take advantage of that, you're probably going to do it, right? So just throwing that out there and going off of that concept, and then also the just general human nature, signs mean less and less and less as we go. There's so many signs. I mean, how many times are there signs that we aren't even aware they exist? I understand that, you know, there's been historical data that indicates that the signs have worked, you know, for no left turns and things like that. From what I'm seeing in my business and in my day-to-day life, I'm seeing less and less of that being true. And the traffic data seems to indicate that I'm correct. And I just want to just put that on the table and have that be food for thought, because that's kind of our job here at the TSPC, is to think about these things. Again, I could be wrong, but just knowing what I know and seeing what I'm seeing, I feel very convinced that without enforcement or barricades or something, that it's just not going to be possible. And let's not forget just the other day, the crossing guard in Lafayette that was killed. It was a tragic accident. From all the reports I've seen, it doesn't seem to me that it was necessarily a reckless or dangerous driver. It was just a bad accident. I could be wrong. But, you know, I've heard, you know, in several times tonight, people say, well, there's a crossing guard. There's a crossing guard. That's great. You know, there's a sign. That's great. But people are driving cars now that have more entertainment and comfort than their own living rooms. And they're distracted. They're not paying attention. They're not following the signs. They're not following the lanes. They're following their phone. And that's a reality. Their phone is telling them which way to go. And I just think that we have to think about these things going forward. That's all I have to say.
I think those are good insights. I will say, I mean, all of them are good insights, including the comfort of cars. And look, I'll take a point of order here because I actually have 2 kids in this school and am living this. And what I'll say is, yeah, to some degree, you're right, Commissioner Ravelos. Like, I think we are driving our kids more because we're home. We don't have to. I don't have to be in San Francisco or Palo Alto at 9 in the morning. My wife doesn't have to be somewhere in the morning. But we're actually just as pressed for time, and I'm actually pretty happy my kids can walk to the school. And I'm fortunate in that way that I live close enough. But I am also seeing, because I live on the route, way more kids biking. And we saw that picture of the bike cage. So there is a community of parents who are pushing their kids to bike. We've always had our kids walk. And I think you can nudge people. You can't change people, but you can nudge people. And you can also nudge people who do feel like they need to drive. Some people are further away, to not necessarily do the drop off right in front of the school in Casada, or the pickup right in front of the school in Casada. And I do want to, again, highlight our experience with Hoover. And past performance is not an indicator of future, but you know, when we did the Hoover design, and Commissioner Martos and I worked really hard on that with the other commissioners at the time, everybody, so many people said, no one's going to drop their kids off at Hillside Circle, which is like a half a block away. No one's going to do that with their elementary school kids. Everyone's going to insist on driving right up to the school. And we built a flow saying, no, if people want to drop their kids in the Hillside Circle, we want to make sure it's an option. And lo and behold, a lot of people do that. A lot of people do that. And it helps the flow quite a bit. And the other thing is, no one's going to be willing to stop going the wrong way on Easton, because we reverse the flow. No one's going to be able to do that. And we did have years of like enforcement back and forth, but guess what? Time passed. People do respect that traffic flow. The sign, we've improved the signage over time. That flow does get respected. So I think we have a pretty good precedent that is at least our best first guess, where we have tackled these challenges and gotten a pretty good result, or I would argue, a much better result than what the alternative would have been had we not tried to do all those things. And it didn't happen in one shot like we all hope. It like took years of incremental education and fine tuning and improving signage and all those things. But we did basically get there. And so I will say it does take some education. It does take some community building around the offsite drop-offs, because again, there are definitely people who are like, we'll get to that intersection on Marco Polo and Clarice and be like, I'm not dropping my 11-year-old here. It's craziness. I have to go straight to the door. But if you tell them, well, look, if you want to get to the front of the school, you're going to have to go up El Camino and then up Truesdale through all those lights and travel like, if you're going to add traffic to Burlingame, you're going to have to do it sort of where everybody else has to add traffic on the main streets, and then come the one way up Quesada. That'll still be better than the alternative, which is not pushing people that way. The other thing that was quickly mentioned, or I saw in the presentation, I don't know, I heard, is moving that bus, which I don't think is there now anyway, but it does seem like, I think it's good to have a bus from the middle school to across town. I actually think it's a really good thing. But if a kid can take a bus across town, kid can walk out to Truesdale and go to a bus stop where there's room for a bus. Running a bus, a big city bus, into this neighborhood does strike me as kind of crazy. So that's one other point. Commissioner Israel, you had your hand up, so I'll stop.
It's just stuck from the last time. Sorry about that.
All right. Well, I don't think we need a motion here, and we've lost the attendees. So I think we could stop here. Ms. Mai, I think, is this all good feedback? Is there anything? You also can always come back to me and Commissioner Israel in the subcommittee if you want to talk more.
Yes, no, these are very good feedbacks. Thank you.
Okay, great. And thank you for all this work. You've made really good progress, I think, given the cold start we made back in
Yes.
the walk audit. And that was, by the way, a
Thank
very
you.
well-run audit. Even just that first walking event was really good and really helpful tour. So I almost forgot to say that. Okay. Well, thank you again, Ms. Mai, for all the great work. I'm excited to see all the progress that's been made.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So with that, we can move into the engineering reports. Mr. Wong.
Thanks, Chair Wetton. Again, I'll pause at each one if you guys have questions on it. California Drive Bicycle Facility. Again, we're reviewing the feedback from the August meeting, and actually they'll be taking the presentation to the council for the September 20th meeting. So you may want to tune into that. I'll also point out, because someone didn't make a comment on during item 5A, Mr. Valesco said, we've reached out to him a couple times regarding his comments, and we'll do it a third. But if Chair Wetton, if you get something beforehand, if you forward us comments, we're happy to take a look at them on that one. Any questions on this? Broadway grade separation project. Again, we're still waiting to complete those value engineering, but we'll be taking this to council at some point, and I'll let you guys know when that goes to see what those value engineering options were. Broadway street lighting improvements. I'm very happy to say the project has been awarded. we will actually start a kickoff meeting with the contractor next week, and then hopefully we'll get a schedule then, and it'll be, we'll see how we work around what's going on out there right now. Not trying to impact the street and hurt any of the businesses any more than we have to. So we'll find out a little bit more about that. The old Bayshore Corridor study, we will be bringing that back to you because, as we said the last time, you looked at a little snapshot, a little cross section, and we wanted to see the entire corridor, roughly like what the improvements would look like. So we'll be bringing that back prior to us going to City Council. Highland Parking Garage. We had a soft opening today. If you didn't see it, if you drove by it, we opened up the first floor. So there are 64 spaces available, including the EV chargers. It's to try to balance out with what's happening in Lot E with the post office site, but we opened it, and right now it's free parking for folks to get in there. So I imagine those will be the first ones filled up throughout the day. And that is it, a short little one for you today.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wong. So that brings us to Police Department reports. Sergeant Perna.
Okay. All right. Hey, everyone. So I put the report up here on the screen. There's nothing highlighted this month, but the collisions were up a little bit in numbers. There was 19 documented collisions. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About there's a good number of injury collisions too. It seems like those were up a little bit this month as well. Looks like there was about 12 or so injury collisions there. Does anyone have any questions about any? I'm sure that, as you can see, there's a number on El Camino this from in August, and there's a few that when I was reviewing them that were some of them were interesting. There was a lot of hitting like fixed objects. As you can see on there, there's 1, 2, there's like 4 or 5 where motorists hit like an object, so like a street sign or like a barricade, like a permanent barricade or something like that. There's a couple that involved truck drivers making wide turns that struck that struck some things. And one thing that's not on here, you might note, is the I can't remember the date that it occurred with the railroad collision. And obviously, if that was in September, I couldn't remember if that was in August or September, but we won't have that one only because the sheriff's office handles that for Caltrain. So I don't really have any other details on that other than what we know. But does anyone have any questions about any of the ones that are on this list?
I do. I am wearing my readers, but still having a little bit trouble seeing. But there were several minor injuries in this one accident that looks like it was at Caroline and Cadillac Way.
Correct. So that one was it was a 3-vehicle accident, and it was like a 3-vehicle rear end accident. So I think one vehicle was like a chain reaction. So one vehicle hit the vehicle in front of it, which then made the vehicle hit that the lead vehicle there. So it was a I believe unsafe speed with a rear end accident.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say there do seem to be a lot of minor injuries this month compared to usual.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have it's difficult to have a reason for that. Sometimes it happens that way. Yeah, I mean, it does seem unusual though. It's not often that we approach 20 accidents. Sometimes I've noticed just that when we have like a lot of officers in training or new officers, sometimes we're taking collisions more often just for training purposes, and then those will obviously end up onto the report. But that didn't happen in this case, so I really have no explanation. Commissioner.
So I was going to ask. So I had 2 things I wanted to ask. One was the specifically about the Oak Grove, California Drive accident, and then more generally about all the El Camino accidents, if any of them involve left turn motions.
Sure. So first of all, the California Oak Grove accident here, this wasn't actually at California Oak Grove. It was a driveway. I think it was in the 700 block of California. Someone was exiting a driveway onto California and basically didn't yield to a vehicle, that had the right of way on California Drive.
Got it. Okay. So we don't need to spend too much time on that. Then I guess my other question is really about just all the El Camino accidents and whether these are left turn or just a
Sure.
coincidence.
So the first one here, I believe this was a rear end accident. The primary collision factor here was unsafe speed. And again, this wasn't at the intersection with Broadway. This was, I believe, north of Broadway. I could double check that. The second one here was in the intersection of Broadway and El Camino. This was a red light. One of the parties did not, either failed to remain stopped or did not stop for the red signal light. This was a yield accident at El Camino and Rosedale. That was a left turn yield accident. The EC El Camino and Murchison was a red light. Bellevue was a left turn accident. And the one at El Camino and Easton was an unsafe turning movement. So I think this was this one was kind of involving a lane change. And I'll look these up to give you more detail, but I just wanted to give you kind of a quick overview as I was looking at the list.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Does anybody else have any questions? Oh, I see Commissioner Revelos. I see your hand up. Sorry. Go ahead.
Sure. So, simple question. The Carolyn and Cadillac, which direction was that?
Carolyn and Cadillac, the one with the multi-vehicle. Let me pull up the details and get that for you. Give me just 1 second. 1, 2, 3. Sorry about that. I was just waiting for my screen to load. So the vehicles were going southbound on Carolyn, and this was just across. It looks like just across from 1070 Carolyn. From the apartments there. I think vehicles were slowing as just approaching the approaching Broadway. So yeah, the vehicle most at fault, just I don't know for what reason, but was traveling at speed unsafe for the conditions, rear-ended the vehicle in front of it, which then struck the third vehicle, rear-ended that vehicle as well.
So they were southbound approaching Broadway?
I'm sorry, southbound on Carolyn approaching, let me pull this up here. It just says stop due to traffic, not the intersection. That was a good catch. Thank you for catching that. But yeah, just as they slowed or stopped for traffic, and the vehicle behind them rear-ended. They were rear-ended by the vehicle behind them, which in turn caused a chain reaction.
I'm just wondering if it was because I know if you're southbound between Broadway and Cadillac, I believe there's a left turn lane onto Cadillac. I could be wrong.
Yeah, there is.
And then you have
at the intersection with Cadillac. I could tell you a better idea of where it was. Again, it was across from. I have to look up exactly where 1070 Carolyn falls. I believe that's south of Cadillac. It was 600 feet south of Cadillac.
Okay. Oh, so probably somebody turning into the driveway, maybe making it, because there's a left turn lane. So was it in the left turn lane? It's not a huge deal at this point, but I'm just curious.
Going southbound there, I don't believe that there's a left turn lane south of Cadillac, is there? I believe the way that the new striping is, there's a, I'd have to see a picture of it, but I believe that there's the way that the new facility is, it's like a bike lane and then a southbound lane,
right,
like a middle, both lanes that could turn. I don't know the term for that. And then the lane
two-way left. Sorry, through the chair, south of Cadillac, it's a two-way left turn lane. North of Cadillac, there's a left turn pocket to take you south, to make the left turn, southbound left turn onto Cadillac.
Yeah, it doesn't indicate they were in a left turn lane. They were just going straight and slowed for traffic.
Interesting. Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay.
Martos has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Martos, go ahead. I didn't see that.
Sergeant Perna, real quick, refresh my memory. The last accident on this list is a hit and run misdemeanor. What? Why is it a misdemeanor?
So just for the purposes of this report, the difference is it would be a hit and run involving injury. So and it's just a criteria in our report, in our system when I run reports for these. But basically, if it's property damage only, it would be a misdemeanor. It doesn't take into account like dollar amount or anything like that. But if it's a hit and run involving injury, then it'd be a felony.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So thank you, Sergeant Perna. It's a very helpful report. I think with that, we can move on to TSPC Chair, Commissioners Communications.
No problem. Just one more thing. I did have
sure.
the collision map. It's updated. If any of you have any questions about that, I know that Commissioner Lee wanted to see it. I know that she's not here, but we could do that. I could just keep it updated and we could maybe do it next time. But if any of you have any questions about that while it's updated, I can answer those as well.
Yeah, I think that map is still, it's proven to be useful even tonight, right? Just being able to hit a spot. So I think it's very useful, and it is helpful to kind of just bring it up on a regular basis. So I appreciate that. Okay, farmers market. I did not reach out this month. I'm in a new job, and I've frankly been a little bit slammed. But I do see farmers market is picking up. So let me take an action on my end to see if I can get us a booth and maybe get us some Sunday time out in the public, which would be nice to have back. And then TSPC Chair, Commissioners Communications. I had the communication reference during the public comments tonight. I don't think I have others. Did anybody else have anything specific? Commissioner Israelite, I see your hand up. But you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I live on Columbus, just off of Adeline, as a lot of you know. So I think it was Kimberly Rosales who made the comment during public comment, and my communications were along the same line. I had several neighbors ask me why the city paid to redo all of the ramps at the crosswalk or at the intersections and the sidewalks, and then redo them literally like 2 or 3 months later. I imagine they were not done properly or not to a certain code, but it was noticeable that, the city spent all this time doing the ramps all the way from, I guess, at least from Columbus down to El Camino, and then turned around and redid them again just a few months later.
And through the chair, I'll like I mentioned earlier, we'll look into this, because there's something that's obviously not something we typically do. We have to upgrade certain ramps during times to bring them up to be ADA compliant, and doing certain things to do that, even though it's a ramp, but there are certain changes that have been made. We have to do that, but it seems unlikely, and we'll look into it more, that we would go through and do a ramp and then come back, and then redo it so soon after. But we'll look at it and we'll get something to you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. I mean, they were just concerned, like, why is this city? I hope the city isn't paying for them to redo them, is the kind of thing. So
I actually did omit a communication I received, and I believe all the commissioners received it actually, but maybe the city staff didn't. Now I'm looking at it. So, well, Mr. Wong, do you get the emails that go to the commissioners from the public? Like, are you have something on the alias where you get it as well? Because I'm looking at this email and it went to the group. I don't see city staff overtly copied, but it's about traffic calming on Balboa. Yeah, you're on mute, Mr. Wong.
I did see that one. Somehow
Okay.
we did get that.
Okay. Well, it's not on the agenda, although in some sense it does hit the school traffic calming issue, but it might be worth at least talking to the person.
And we will. I just saw that one come in today, at least when I got it. But we are just we're addressing that crosswalk. We're going to try to do some enhancements, and that's part of Ms. Mai and working on the. Not sure if it's the quick stripe, but some of the improvements that we're doing.
We're talking about the same one,
The mid-block crossing right in front of Ray Park and on Balboa.
Yeah. Okay.
And I just wanted to comment. I believe we talked about doing something with that crosswalk when we were discussing redoing the Ray Park, the parking lot, and discussing that project that went through. So, but we didn't finish deciding what to do, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll leave it with you, Mr. Wong, and maybe come back and just give us an update, at least in the engineering report. And just let us know that you got back to the letter writer, since I believe she addressed all of us. Okay, well, with that, if no one else has, oh, sorry, Commissioner Rebelo, sorry. Your hand kind of blends with your ceiling, so that's why I keep missing.
Yeah, I know. I always have, I'm too color coordinated over here. So I don't, I don't seem to have that email that you just referenced.
Oh.
It's not in the agenda packet, right?
No,
And it's,
it was
I don't
just
think I
separately.
received it in my inbox.
I will.
And
yeah.
the only reason I bring it up is because, yeah, for whatever reason, I don't seem to have it. So that's all.
I will forward it to you.
That's fine.
So you can see it.
There it is. Thank you.
That's fast. Okay, let's talk about committee and subcommittee reports. So the first one is downtown for Commissioner Martos and I. We have not met, but I know there's been some activity around, or there was basically, from what I understand, the city sort of punted on the parklets in August. So we're just sort of still in a holding pattern on that. I think that's the big issue when it comes to downtown. That, and of course, the opening of the garage and the closing of the lobby, right?
Mr. Wong, where are we with renaming the Highland parking garage to the Howard Wetton parking garage?
I hope nowhere.
Have we made any progress?
I believe it's sitting on the city manager's desk and council waiting for approval.
Okay.
I think you just broke the record for the least popular proposal in the history of TSPC. Right there, that would do it.
Sorry, back to the parklets. I believe the action was planning is looking at a program or how to charge basically the business owners for the use of the parklets.
Yeah. But obviously, I'll stick by what I said. I think I had some strong feelings about it, but in fairness, I thought we were done with COVID. So a lot of my thinking was based on the idea that we would be coming back to something more of a status quo ante, which we may not be. So it makes sense maybe to play it for a little time. Although some of my broader feelings I think remain the same. I guess Commissioner Martos is okay with you. We'll go to the Broadway one. Okay, Broadway parking and traffic issues. Commissioner Israelit as the sole present member. Anything?
Yeah, no, I mean, we had come up with a few issues that we drafted and sent to Mr. Wong, and I think they're looking at some of those, but we haven't done anything in the past month.
Yeah. In all fairness, last month was August. So, and then school traffic, that's you and I, and obviously we just.
I think we talked a lot about that today.
Yeah, all I will say is Ms. Mai's gone, but we should make sure she understands she should take advantage of our offer, just to bounce some stuff off us. And I would like to just make sure, like I said, the school year has its own cadence, and if we miss the window, we miss the window, and there won't be any improvement next year either if we're not really on top of it.
And for the other commissioners, like if you guys, well, I know Commissioner Rebelis probably wants something to do on his vacation, so, but seriously, if you guys, if you look at the map, if you have any free time, and just try to envision if there is a better way to have cars come from Truesdale and also come from Ray, and, just fiddle around with it, see if you can come up with anything that seems like it might work better than what we've been able to come up with so far.
And I'll noodle with it more too. Maybe if, well, I guess it's in our packet. We have a map in our packet. I'll add, if you have a hankering for ice cream and chaos around 2:30 in the afternoon, any weekday, you should do it. I mean, you should walk down there, park please a good distance away and walk down there. It is really worth seeing with your own eyes. And I say that as someone who's a parent. I had a kid go all the way through 3 years, and I was still totally shocked by what I saw. So,
sorry, through the chair, just one comment on that, specifically that ice cream truck, because we did, and this goes to thanks to Sergeant Perna. We did reach out and ask them if maybe they could talk to the ice cream, not say get out here, stay away, but. I believe they have it, because we've gone out there. Sergeant Perna's gone out there, and the truck hasn't been out there the last few days. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but he and his staff have gone out there and just done some periodic checks, and that truck hasn't been there. So,
well, don't tell the middle school kids that was our idea. I hope they find a better place and the middle school kids could get their ice cream. But yeah, that was amongst many problems. Okay, so well, Commissioner Israelit and I will follow through with Ms. Mai and try and have a check-in on all the good work that's happening there. And I do encourage everyone else to take a look. Citywide transportation alternatives, Commissioner Rebelis and I have had some good meetings, but not this past month. So
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, the month got by me.
Yeah, no. Well, again, I think it's cool. It's August. It's understandable. And then BPAC we already covered. So let's talk about future agenda items. Try and make notes. So I know, and I think I'm excited to see this. We're going to hear next month about the north of Broadway, California piece. I got stuck in that traffic today, taking my kid to soccer practice. It was quite unpleasant. I don't have any intelligence to add, just that I'm glad that we're getting it on the agenda, and I'm looking forward to that discussion quite a bit.
I just want to say that next month is my birthday, and I kind of feel like this is on the agenda as a special gift to me. Thank you, Mr. Wong.
Mr. Tsai, he's on it, and yeah, he and his team, the design team, will we'll be showing you what we have, and we'll also, I think I mentioned to Chair Wetton that we'll again notice the business owners so no one's caught by surprise, that we're gonna go through the exercise again a little bit, but with a little bit more. Like, here's what we're doing, and then we can address some of the, we'll chip away at it, because I mean, that's about all we can do right now.
Please start chipping. That traffic is not good. And then Mr. Wong, you may have some other things I'm not thinking of, but I was just going to add, going back to the very beginning of the meeting, I think putting Carmelita on the agenda might be a good idea. It's being used now. We can talk about planning in the future and what we think is the right place, the wrong place, but I can tell you as an eyewitness, it's being actively used now. I think I've seen a couple middle school kids coming the other way. I've seen a lot of high school kids going that way. And so anything we can do knowing that it's being used, I think would be helpful. And then we can have the discussion of if it's the right place or the wrong place. We heard Commissioner Revelos's views, which I welcome.
And through the chair, we will be bringing that to you. It's not just Carmelita, it's Carmelita and Paloma, which are being which we identified in the bike ped plan. And we wanted to at least throw down in front of the bike ped folks, BFAC folks, to get it altered, revise it, and then bring it back to you. I'm not sure, it may be next month. I'll have to check with Ms. Mai, but that one will be coming to you. And if you don't allow me, again, I mentioned Old Bayshore is something that we could be talking about next month. And then I touched base with Miss Michael regarding the EV chargers, and
yes,
unfortunately, she hasn't had a chance to talk to some of the property owners or landlords, as you had indicated. But I'll sit down and talk to her now that this week is over, and see where she's at.
All I'll say on that is that's worth waiting for, meaning I would rather her come back a month later having had a few good discussions with property owners than not, because, again, this is my own previously expressed view. Most of the buildings in Burlingame will still be here in 15 years when everybody's supposed to be in electric car. So we need a plan, right? The new reach codes, that's good, but we still have Commissioner Revelos lives in a building where I know from firsthand experience, like that's a headache. And we probably shared a garage, so he probably knows there were like a bunch of cars, like with, it's pretty tough situation that'll only get worse. So
I'll touch
the whole thing where they were blowing the circuits here.
Yeah, I was blowing one of those circuits.
Yeah, and they had to
That was
stop
me.
everybody from plugging their cars in.
Yeah,
You were one of them. There was a few.
yeah, there was like, you can't plug two Teslas into one 110 outlet, as it turns out. You can do a non-Tesla in a Tesla and it'll work, but two Teslas, you're gonna blow it.
Just 3 weeks ago, there was one parked outside, and they ran an extension cord from their balcony all the way out.
Yeah,
So it definitely has to come up. It's got to be done.
yeah, and it's like, I know it sounds crazy and it sounds like a first world problem.
And frankly, I don't know. I don't want to hijack this conversation, which I tend to do, but I want to say, in a building like this, 170 units, where do the e-bikes go?
Yeah, that's a good point too. Well, let's do. I know we're not supposed to like actually talk substance, but I think it's fair to say that the agenda should be sufficiently wide. The item should be widened to that. But it sounds like a first world problem. But like I said, we're just quickly approaching a world where all that absurdity is going to multiply. Okay. That gets us to adjournment. Before I go, I would say I do miss folks. When are meetings going back in person?
I don't have official word.
I guess with Delta.
Yeah, and city staff is back. City Hall is now open, so we'll see where it goes. But that's at least a starting point, right? You have to have a city hall open in order to have meetings here. So.
Well, before I adjourn, I'm going to toss in my suggestion I made right before quarantine. There's an outdoor meeting, like the Athenian Forum. Like this is how democracy started. It started outdoors, so it's doable.
Record it now. If we can record it and have, we'll see.
Yeah. Anyway, I miss people. I'm going to adjourn. We can't chat after. I'll just say I miss seeing folks in person. Thank you for hanging in. It's a long meeting. Meeting adjourned.
Good seeing you
Yeah.
guys and have a great
Thank you all.
vacation,
Goodbye.
Ethan.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Bye, guys.
I hope
Bye.
to see you guys in person in October. Let's be hopeful. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks,
Take care,
Len.
everyone.
Thanks,
Good
Howard.
night.